We'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to call the meeting of Select Board meeting of Tuesday, October 10th to order. First item is approval of the agenda.
So second.
Moved and seconded. I think I saw some email traffic of some additions and maybe deletions.
We have a deletion of the liquor license for McIntyre Discount Beverage. The licensee will be refiling with a new business name. We have the addition of item 13B, Vermont 116 water line replacement, and number 13C, authorize the signature of a letter of intent with New England Hydropower Company, LLC.
Okay. The second one was an addition where?
13C.
13C.
Both.
At the end.
Water line is B and
Okay.
the
That's
hydro
the
is.
cheat sheet. It's on my desk.
Yeah, it's under your head.
Yeah. All right.
Be with all
Okay.
either.
Any other
See you.
additions or deletions?
Oh, well, I'm just going by this.
Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, next is approval of the consent agenda.
I move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. There was the deletion of 3C, the McIntyre application. Anything anybody would like to call attention to? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda with the one deletion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Citizen comments. I know there are some people here. Dean George is not online. He's right here. I know there are some people here to talk about a recent loss. Before we jump into that, is there anybody here for something other than that that is not on the agenda?
Michael, there.
Absolutely, please.
Hi, I'm Wendy Warren from Rogers Road, and I did email a request, but I was probably late because of the holiday to be on the agenda to just make a request for a safety committee meeting sometime in the near future. I had emailed Andy and.
It's scheduled for next week.
Oh, it's scheduled. Okay. You didn't tell me.
Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you.
Date and time?
Yeah, I'll dig it up. Hang on.
October 23rd at 4 o'clock. It's like the fourth Monday. And it will be here.
And it'll be in the town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Kevin Perizzo, Seymour Street. When I was here at the September 12th meeting, it was discussed from the police department, fire department about a secondary access in case we were to lose the underpass and the bridge again. I was just following up as to asking if there's been any progress.
I have reached out to the State Agency of Transportation to ask for their ideas and interaction with Vermont Rail on that piece.
And you'll keep all of us posted, or the residents as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Anything else? Okay, that, I guess I would entertain someone to come forward here.
I could stand. What would you all stand? Hi, John. How are you?
Make the youngest stand.
We won't comment on that. We're here to begin a little celebration. As we know, we lost a great community member in Victor Nuovo this past week. And a few of us wanted to come in and recognize and honor him here today, just briefly. So, Mr. George,
Thank you,
please
John.
go ahead.
Thank you. I thought I would just begin by kind of going back over an important time in the community that Victor was a very important part of when he joined the select board. So I'm going to move back about 18 years when the board was in the throes of trying to come up with a way to facilitate reviving the Cross Street Bridge project again, Bridge Commission. And the chair at the time, my colleague John, appointed me as the chair of the Bridge Committee, and we began working with some great folks from the community, staff members, for a couple of years, trying to put together the best possible way to get this program going again, with our intentions being that we were going to go back to the legislature and get a project which is typically funded by the state at 80% federal, 10% state, 10% local. So we did all the background work to revive this project. We studied the other options of where it might go. We looked at the properties we're going to have to acquire, and we came up with a really good design. We went to the legislature, tried to get the project, which, by the way, had been on the books since 1955, had not been accomplished. And finally, we were able to get them to look at it, but we didn't have the political clout, as it turns out, to get this project moved up where it needed to be. So we were a bit discouraged. And in 2006, Victor became a member of the Select Board and quickly got involved with this process as we were moving along. We knew we couldn't get the burden of this project totally on the backs of the property tax. And so we were trying to figure out another way to fund the project. So as we were simultaneously looking at a local option tax for the town, we also visited with the college. And at the time, John had set up so that once a month, 3 board members would meet with President Leibowitz, or whoever was the president at the time, and a couple of their staff members. And you may still be doing that now, which is great if you are. And at the time, Victor and John and I went up and sat down with President Leibowitz and talked about where we were at with the project, which they knew, essentially, and that we were a bit discouraged because the federal funding was not coming forward. And we knew this just going to push it down the road, and the cost would continue to grow, more than likely wouldn't get done. So Victor, in a very eloquent way, who was friends with President Leibowitz, in fact, had him as a student many years before, quietly and very eloquently said, this is an important project for the college too, and they need to be part of how we get this solved. And the long and short of that conversation was President Leibowitz asked, how much money do you think you're going to need from us? And he went before the trustees and came back with a proposal to pay for $9 million of that project through a bond, allowing us to come up with the local option tax to pay for our part of the bond for the balance of that fund. So now we had the means to go forward with this project without having to wait for local and state support. So I brought with me, which if you'll indulge me, I'd like to read a letter that Victor wrote in the year of the celebration of the opening of the Cross Street Bridge. It was posted in the Addison Independent and the Rutland Herald, and also in our 2010 town report. But I think it speaks to Victor's values and his thoughts about our community in a really nice way. Yesterday, October 30th, 2010, the Cross Street Bridge was officially opened in Middlebury. There was a gala celebration that lasted half a day, ending with fireworks and a display of lights. It started with a parade of children walking through a make-believe wall that supposedly blocked the roadway onto the bridge. It was a perfect beginning for a half century from now. These children will remember that day on which the project was completed and been on the town agenda for more than 50 years. They will remember it along with the Halloween candy that they gathered, and they marched through the town on their way to the bridge, and in the mementos that were handed out at that time. Gradually in their lifetimes, the bridge will transform into a venerable landmark, quietly and reliably bearing the town's daily traffic, which it certainly does. It seems fitting that this magical march of the children should unite past and future in this way, in bridge generations. What will the children recall 50 years from now when they are no longer children but seniors? I hope they'll remember that the bridge was entirely local funded, made possible through a partnership between the town of Middlebury and Middlebury College, and it was built during a time of national economic distress and provided employment for many who might otherwise have been unemployed. That it was the product of teamwork from start to finish, involving the town and college officials who had a vision, and 3 regional companies and with complementary specialties in design and construction to make this vision a reality. What does all this mean? It would be nice to say that Middlebury's achievement can be an example to other towns of the benefits of self-reliance. But of course, not every town has a college that is well endowed, not only monetarily, but also with a wealth of public spirit as we do. Nor does every town enjoy a sufficient amount of commerce to profit from a local option tax. Middlebury is, after all, a county seat and a market town. Nor would I want to ally myself with all those ill wishers of state and federal governments and cite our achievement as proof that we can get along without them. I still like Middlebury being in Vermont and Vermont being one of the United States. But there is something very precious in local achievements, like building the Cross Street Bridge, which is, if I may say so, a thing of beauty, spanning the scenic river, providing a pleasant promenade, joining neighborhoods, promoting commerce, and just being there. Towns like ours exist for the benefit of the people who reside in them and the delight of those who pass through. They provide opportunities for the satisfactions that only people living and working together in a community can realize. Opportunities to achieve something of human value that lasts for a long time, enough to unite generations and to share a common vision of public well-being. Thank you.
It's certainly no surprise that your recollections today of that meeting with Ron Leibowitz and Bob Huth and the events that followed were top of our minds here.
Yeah.
And I so well remember being in my office a little more than a week later, getting the phone call from Ron Leibowitz that the college would go ahead and work with us on that. And well, the rest is history on that. My message is direct but short in remembering Victor. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to honor Victor Nuovo in the town's house and before the board on which he served so well. This is a setting for his public work in the community he cared for so deeply. As all of us who have had the good fortune to work with him and know him well can attest, Victor Nuovo was a gift. A teacher, a philosopher, a public servant, a mentor, and a strong conscience for the town all marked Victor's life and legacy in Middlebury. His wise counsel, patience, and kind spirit helped to solve a number of thorny issues in his town service. I learned a lot from Victor, and I know many of you did as well. When I last saw Victor at Betty's memorial service just 6 weeks ago, I knew time was short. I gave him the biggest hug I could, and I'm so glad I had that opportunity. He had a great life. What a gift for us all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, for the record, I'm Nick Ardem, and along with my other friends and colleagues, I don't know if any of you knew, but we also sat where you sit right now. No, I knew Victor before I came on the board from work with the Public Safety Committee and just around town. But I really came to know Victor when I came on the board as a mentor, as he did for so many of us. Victor was about good governance. He was passionate of always making us realize that we represented everyone in the town, not just those who voted for us, those who agreed with us, those who were part of our social circle, but everyone. And that was a responsibility that we took very seriously, and Victor always reminded us of that. And he was also not terribly tolerant of those who kind of forgot that part. Fortunately, on our board, we always held on to that dearly. Victor loved this town. We've heard very well about, in the letter that Dean just presented about the bridge. Well, there was another project that may never have happened without Victor, and we're sitting in it. He was very influential, once again, in his connections with the college, in being able to make a project that took over 22 years to come to fruition occur. I was, at the time, chairing that board, or the committee, and we recall looking at what the cost was and saying, we're likely to fail again. replace what was really a decrepit structure with something that was more appropriate. And Victor said, we'll make it happen. I don't know, it's sort of a quiet thing that he and Betty never really discussed much. But if you go outside and look up at this corner of the building from Main Street, you'll see an illuminated etching with the date 1761, the Charter of Middlebury, and 2016, the date this building was built. And that was a gift of Betty and Victor. I always kept that quiet, but I kind of think maybe it was a perch for them to be able to look down Main Street and have to think maybe that's possibly happening. He also had this incredible sense of humor. Son of these Italian immigrants, and he could be really spot on in some of his jokes. Now, I know probably on occasion, some of you have experienced like we did, just those evenings when the board meeting is just difficult. Becomes somewhat painful. Your head hurts, your stomach hurts, and you say, I just want to go home. We've had a difficult meeting. And Victor would sit next to me on some of those occasional meetings, and he would lean over and say, we're going to Scotland or Ireland tonight. Well, what that was referring to is at the end of the board meeting, we were going to go to town, two brothers, and we were going to have a wee dram of Scottish or Irish. And I said, do we have to make a choice, Victor? And he goes, well, no, but maybe we'll stop in Kentucky on the way. Had great conversations, great jokes with Victor. And Betty was funny because more than once she'd say, okay, now, if you two have too much to drink tonight, I want you to call Chief Hanley and have one of the police officers bring you home. And so Victor would say it's N-U-O-V-O. It's like, what's that? He goes, N-U-O-V-O. I want to make sure that when John Flowers writes the note into the police log that 2 half-canned select board members were brought home by the police, he gets the spelling right. And I said, Victor, you and I have known John for a long time, and you know if he ever gets to write that story, he's going to get the names correct. Victor, that was Victor in so many different ways, and he was a good friend, good colleague, and we're all going to be a little more vacant because we don't have him around with us. But on the other hand, we were very fortunate to all have him as part of our life.
Nick. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak about Victor for a couple of minutes tonight as well. I wrote my comments down for fear that I would actually forget what I wanted to say. I was very privileged to serve with Victor on the select board. And when I joined the board, he was kind, encouraging, funny, and very welcoming. He made me feel at home. I got to hear his laugh on a lot of occasions while enjoying early morning breakfast at Steve's Park Diner. And I think some of our most important conversations took place down there. Victor was the Charles A. Dana Professor Emeritus of Philosophy at Middlebury College. He was a dedicated and well-published scholar. And he frequently shared his knowledge in articles and essays in the Addison Independent. What an unbelievable gift that is to a small community to have had that available. Sometimes the reading was challenging, but it was always illuminating. Victor was first and foremost a devoted husband to Betty, his wife of 70 years. He was a very proud father and grandfather. He was a man of many, many accomplishments. But I think the accomplishment he would point to with great pride and satisfaction is his role as a member of the select board, the role of public servant, because he truly understood the meaning of public servant and all that public service entails. The responsibility of working for citizens to develop programs, services, and policies for the common good. Not for a political party, not to satisfy a political or personal agenda, and not for personal gain. Conscience appeared in many articles that he wrote, and conscience directed his actions. Both he and Betty felt a call to public service, a duty to their community and to their state and country. They represented all citizens, and they felt it was a privilege to be able to do so. Without exaggeration, I think Victor was a man for all seasons, constantly acting from conscience and personal integrity. And it may be a somewhat overused phrase, but this community will not be the same without him, nor are we ever going to see another exactly like him. I am so grateful to have known him and to have served with him. And I am so grateful for all he did for this community and how he did it. I thank you all very much.
Brian, you and I came on at the same time, and so know the projects to which people have spoken already tonight and how proud we were and clear we were about Victor's relationship with the college and how that helped us, assisted us. To which I would add, I think that in his honor, he would be really happy to see us advance the library project, another project to which I think he was quite devoted. The other thing I could say about Victor with great fondness is he was a great walker. And with Betty, we would see him, as others, do, strolling about our town, our downtown, with eyes open and paying attention and wishing for its safety and accessibility. And I know a lot of us here are assembled tonight to hold that. And I think he's with us holding that too. So I just wanted to add that. And I'm grateful for that spirit with us tonight.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? I just want to say I will miss Victor a lot. He was a tremendous support in when I came onto the board. He was, has always been a mentor to many people, as everybody has spoken, but a very positive one. And he really believed in deliberation and bringing in other thoughts, and he insisted on it at the board level, and was a really good role model for all of us to watch and observe the way he went about it. So I will miss him in that stead, but also just as a friend, going out to dinner with he and Betty. We've lost them both this year, and just watching them walk about town. I mean, there wasn't a more adorable couple in this community than Victor and Betty. He was dedicated to her, and just a tremendous man that will be missed. So thank you for the dedication to him. So for that, I'm going to move on to discussion of homelessness in Middlebury. And I know Rick, I saw Rick. There you are. Hey, Rick, why don't you kick it off?
Bear with me here. I'm not the greatest public speaker. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rick Buck. My wife and I own Mr. Up's restaurant. We've owned it for over 12 years at this point. I've worked there continuously for over 25 years of my life. So for the better part of a quarter century, I've put my so-called blood, sweat, and tears into a local business. And everybody that owns a local business, which there are plenty of people here, know how hard it is to run that. And the reason I'm here and a lot of other people are here is there's a homeless encampment within a few feet of my business door. And we've been dealing with it for quite a while at this point. So I'd like to thank the select board and Kathleen for allowing us this opportunity to be part of this and having a dialogue for this and hopefully coming to some sort of resolution. I'm sure it won't happen tonight, but it needs to start. And I think a lot of people are concerned about this. I'd also like to thank Karen from the Better Middlebury Partnership. She has brought us together as a business community. She's also spearheaded these impact statements that I think almost all of us have written. Is it fair to say that you all have access to these impact statements or have read them or will read them?
Yes.
Yeah, we've read them.
Okay. So I've read almost all of them, if not all of them, along with mine and a lot of other people's. There's a lot of things that are in all honesty, violating the rights of business owners and our ability to do business, to protect our employees, to protect that business. So I'm not going to reiterate all that. You obviously all read them, so I'm not going to go into that. So I think what I'm going to do quickly, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have something to say, I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline from my perspective and my business's perspective on how we actually got here tonight. I would say probably a year or two, there's been individuals or homeless or semi-homeless people that are occupying the bridge area. They come and they go. Seems like they used to come late morning and they usually would leave before dark. And this has been going on for a few years at this point. But there hasn't really at that point been a whole lot of trouble. They were out of sight. They usually kept behind the bridge. I know a few of them, not personally, but I recognize them. I've talked to them. And some of those same individuals are now living there. Fast forward to probably the last 5 or 6 months, things have escalated to the point where now there are tents down there. At one point, there was at least 7 tents under the bridge, around the bridge, on both sides of the bridge. So it's becoming obvious that people are living there full time, 24 hours a day. Some of these people are the ones that I recognize, and some have come from other areas. And then it got to the point where on a daily basis, my business was being affected. My life was being affected. My customers, my employees' safety has been affected. There's been vandalism to numerous people. I know vandalism to employees' cars, businesses, buildings. There's been threatening behavior. There has been music, fires with smoke coming across my deck while people are dining. Defecation and urination. I mean, you name it. I've seen it in the last few months. So that spurred me to write a letter. Actually, I'm not going to lie. My wife wrote the letter. We sent it to the select board. We sent it to Kathleen, and we also sent it to the police department. A few days later, Kathleen got back to me via email. She acknowledged that the town or the select board or people knew about the situation. It was being talked about. There was been discussion about it, which made me feel better because at that point, in all honesty, I thought like I was kind of on my own, being right there. Later on, I realized that Caroline had a lot of the same issues, and she was also kind of on the front line. Along with this email was a letter from the ACLU that was sent out. I'm not sure how many townsfolk have read this or seen it or are made aware of it. It's about a 3 or 4 page letter. I'm under the assumption that it's been sent to a lot of municipalities and a lot of towns and cities across the state, and I would imagine across the country. In my opinion, there's some parts of this letter that are just not just. That's from my perspective. And I would encourage everybody to read the letter because I think that is kind of what is holding some things back as far as states and municipalities are worried about the liability and the suit that the ACLU is threatening to bring to towns that might move or take away homeless people in public areas. So after that, I waited a little bit, and on a daily basis, I continued to have to deal with this. I woke up thinking about it. I went to sleep thinking about it. Every day I was at work, I either talked to the police or an ambulance driver or a customer, somebody, every single day. My employees were scared, not scared, but they had people walk them to their cars and things like this. I had a customer actually call me and ask if it was safe for them to park under the bridge. My answer was, I park under the bridge. So I felt like I had to do something else. So I emailed Kathleen and we got put on the agenda for tonight. And that was about a month ago. At that point, like I said, I thought I was kind of on my own, but the last month or so has been very tumultuous, and a lot of people have experienced a lot of vandalism to their employees' cars, to their buildings, threats, and things like that. Caroline and Karen set up a meeting the Friday of Parents Weekend. A lot of business owners went to it. I think it was very productive. Our new chief of police was there, who enlightened me specifically, well, not specifically at me, but I came away from the meeting being enlightened with some of the obstacles and hurdles that our police department go through, dealing with judges just not setting bond and bail, and that's a whole nother issue. But we were informed about some of the hoops that the police department has gone through. And I want to thank the police department because I've spoke pretty much to every officer of yours over the last few months, and every one of them has been awesome. So that's a credit to this town. So that basically brings us here tonight. And
Okay.
thankfully, I'm not on my own.
No, you're not, Rick. So I'm going to treat that as the problem statement. And rather than roll out testimonials to the problem, I think it's well documented, well known. I'd like to start with an education process. So John, and I know he's taking copious notes here. So we're going to make sure that people understand, number one, what the problem is. Number two, what we're doing about it as far as that we're bringing all efforts to bear. And then we can get into maybe some further discussion. But I would ask you to cede the chair to our chief of police. And I think he's a good guy to start with. I was there when he spoke to the merchants, and he's got a really good grasp, I think, of the situation, and is the first call for everybody. So let's start with Chief Covey giving us an update and background.
Okay, thank you. Rick explains it well. This is a complex issue and one we are sensitive to. There are two issues in this community right now that have gotten intertwined that I'll try to unravel a little bit. We have the issue of the encampment. Everybody knows about that, and that comes with its own complexities. The issues of the vandalisms in the town feeling besieged by a literal crime spree is connected, but it's also very separate. Those vandalisms, the employees' cars being broken or vandalized, are the work of primarily one person. And that highlights the limits of our criminal justice system, because that one person who conveniently is not exactly welcome under the bridge. The folks that are living there, the permanent residents, don't like the attention it's bringing and don't like some of the activities that are taking place. I'll speak about her, this female that's been responsible for the majority of this. She is no stranger to Vermont law enforcement. As of this afternoon, I checked statewide. All law enforcement agencies use the same database so we can see each other's activities. She has 78 involvements with law enforcement in Vermont in 2023, 30 of those with the Middlebury Police Department. Since September 18th, 22 of those involvements with us have occurred. So very frequent. We have arrested her 7 times. Out of those 22 incidents, those are incidents that we know she was involved in, 7 of which we could make an arrest for, 6 that we believe she's responsible for, 6 crimes. We just haven't been able to prove it yet. In each of those 7 arrests, the officers take her into custody. We contact a judge, as is the process in Vermont, and the judge orders her to be released. That is, again, part of our process in Vermont and something the police have no say in. State's Attorney Feckless is here tonight. She can speak more about bail and bail decisions if you'd like a better education than I can provide on that. But so simply, we arrest her. The judge orders us to release her, sometimes to be arrested shortly thereafter. Again, on one Saturday in particular, we arrested her 3 times that day. And the 3rd time, the judge did set bail at $500. So she was placed in a correctional center for the weekend. She was arraigned on Monday and released after that arraignment. So that's the revolving door that we see sometimes. From a community standpoint, what do we do about that? Vigilance, and you call the police, and we do what we can. The state's attorney will prosecute. I've had conversations with the state's attorney. They will prosecute these cases, but they too are limited. They can ask for bail, they can argue for bail, but there are bail limitations. You'll see nationwide a movement towards less use or no use at all of cash bail. Vermont hasn't reached that point, but we have seen a change in the past couple of decades in the use of bail. That's the one issue. The other issue is the encampment. And that one is more complex in the sense that we can't just arrest our way out of it. I checked the numbers. So I looked since May 1st. The police department has had 24 calls for service related to the folks under the bridge. Out of those calls for service, we've made no arrests related to behavior. We've made 2 arrests on outstanding arrest warrants, just that those folks happen to have, which we would arrest them for any place they had been in the state that law enforcement interacted with them, they would have been arrested, and they were released shortly after. Those calls have run the gamut from us just assisting with medical calls. The ambulance goes there for somebody that's intoxicated, falling down. We've had reports of fights. I personally have been to those in my former job, and all of those have been unresolved. When we arrive, it's people fighting amongst themselves, the residents, the occupants of that area fighting amongst themselves, and the usual story. We don't know what you're talking about, officer. We're all good here. So we have not made any arrests related to that type of activity. We've had no overdoses. We've had just behavioral type complaints, things about public urination, things about drinking, campfires under the bridge, that sort of activity. So where does that leave us? We can't just make it go away. It's not that simple. These are folks who are on public property, who have a constitutional right to be there. That doesn't mean they can be there with impunity. That doesn't mean they can just be there and do whatever they want. But our ability to regulate their behavior is very limited. Take, for example, open containers. If someone is on town property with an open container of alcohol, we certainly can take enforcement action. That enforcement action is a civil ticket. That's a traffic ticket. For many of these folks, if not all of these folks, that traffic ticket has no deterrent value. There is no penalty for non-payment. They will never be arrested for non-payment. So if they don't pay it, nothing happens. Even if that statute were criminal, as it was until a year or 2 ago, when an open container was a criminal violation in Middlebury, even if it still was, that wouldn't resolve this. As I'm talking about somebody committing felony levels of damage to cars, that person's not going to jail. Somebody having an open container of alcohol on town property is not going to go to jail. That will not remove them from the scenario. So, having said that, we can't just easily displace. We could displace these folks. The town could make policy decisions to make that area under the bridge off limits. We would do so through a process. We would give notice to the folks there, and then simply at some point, predetermined, start erecting boundaries, putting up no trespassing signs, so that if they returned or refused to leave, they would then be trespassing. We then would arrest them. They then would be back out on the street. They would not go to jail for that. That's, again, the point I'm trying to make, trying to illustrate our system. We are not going to arrest our way out of this scenario. We're not going to arrest our way out of a crime spree scenario. So what the police department has done, this is a community issue. This isn't just the police department to deal with this. This requires everyone to put their heads together and work together. We assembled a task force, which involves all community partners. That's the police department, that's counseling service, Charter House, United Way, you name it, whichever agency. The State Department of Health has gotten involved and expressed interest in becoming involved. The purpose of this task force is to brainstorm and work together to find a way to mitigate the issue. Rick talked about the ACLU's letter. I've read that. Before I ever read it, I heard the talking points from one of the permanent residents under the bridge. So when we were there, and as we usually do, we go there, there's some issue, and we speak to the people there who are not always the most reasonable and understanding, and very often under the influence of something. And we routinely tell them, if you keep drawing attention to yourselves, the town is going to have no choice but to move you. Sometimes we're bluffing. That's what we do sometimes. And one of the gentlemen there told me, we're on public property. If you kick us out, you need to provide public property for us to go. That is the first time I had ever heard that. And probably 3 or 4 weeks later, I read the ACLU's letter, which that's almost verbatim what the ACLU says. With Rick, I agree. I don't subscribe to everything the ACLU says, but they do have some some points. There's some merit to some of their points. They do cite case law where they have successfully filed suit, for example, against the city of Burlington. They're also interested in a case in Vermont Superior Court in Newport, Vermont, over a municipality issuing a trespass notice to a citizen. And that has been challenged. And the Superior Court judge has already found in the plaintiff's favor in some of those matters. So again, this is legally complex. As we approach this, it is my opinion we can't just regulate our way out of this, just like we can't arrest our way out of this. We need to find a better alternative. This is, as I like to say, any town USA. This is not unique to Middlebury, and this isn't new here. I've been here for almost 24 years, and we've had this in some way, shape, or form for my entire career. It is lately getting more attention, but we have had years past where we've had a lot of attention drawn about these folks. Formerly, the Green was a popular spot. The gazebo was an overnight spot that was garnering a lot of attention and many calls to the police department. Some of the conversations that have come up have been extending the town's park closing ordinance, which is already on the books, to the area of Bakery Lane. That on its face sounds good, but every town and park, the town green, for example, closes at midnight, and people are not allowed to use the green, regardless of who they are. A violation of that is a civil ticket, that traffic ticket that I just talked about. If we extend that to Bakery Lane, I just talked about what I think the deterrent effect of a civil ticket will be on members of this population. Also, an unintended consequence could be the impact to people who just like to walk along the river or use that area at night. That's not an ordinance such as that. It's not something that the police department could selectively enforce. So we need to bear that in mind. So what I think our take is to engage with these partners as we have been, to try to intervene with this group. Another level of complexity here is that again, I keep calling them permanent residents, they are where they want to be. It's not for lack of resources that they have no place to stay. Some of them choose to stay there, or they will not abide by behavior guidelines in places where they may be able to go. So that makes this more challenging. It's not something we can, again, displace them, but where are they going to go? We can't just wish them away. They could end up somewhere else. They could end up sleeping on the sidewalks downtown. Again, we are not immune, nor are we unique. So I think there's a multi-pronged approach to take. In the interim, the police department has stepped up our presence in that area. I asked the business owners how much of us they would like to see at this meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they said a lot. And I said, as resources will allow, we will be there. So if you see more of us downtown, that's by design. And officers have been going there early morning, midday, late at night, and just being a presence, to the point that some of the permanent residents are waking up in the morning and greeting our officers, saying good morning to them, because they expect us to be there. That is our Band-Aid right now. Well, we put our heads together and find a more permanent solution. I don't know what that solution is, but this is our way to try to buy time. Again, our resources are what they are. We triage our resources, and we can't be there all the time. There are multiple demands on our time, but we will do our best as we approach this humanely, which is an important component of this. You can't just throw people out. It's not that simple, but we are sensitive to what the business owners and community members are saying and the discomfort they feel. And we will try to manage that. And that's what we're trying to do now while this group, this task force newly formed, looks at ways to bring this to a more positive resolution, for everyone.
Thanks, Chief. And I believe that Sergeant Bowe was part of the group that met also with all of the social service agencies. And I believe I was told the social service agencies have upped their level of engagement with some of the individuals as well. Is there I see a head nodded in the back. Is there someone from one of the social service agencies that maybe we could just kind of hear from?
Can we ask the chief questions?
Can I ask the chief a question?
Can we ask the chief a question?
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Chief?
Sure.
So on the encampment you're talking about, you and Rick brought it up. is this the only encampment that you're aware of, or there are other places in town?
So this is the one that gets all of our attention. There was another in progress that was reported to us a couple weeks ago, but that was on private property. Private property is easy. If the landowner, the property owner doesn't want the person there, then the person can't be there. So we were called, the officers went there, and those folks left. Some of those folks are the folks who were under the bridge. We've had this historically, just not under the bridge. As Rick said, it's been under the bridge the last couple of years. Formerly, this was more prevalent in areas along the Otter Creek and the so-called Happy Trail. We had encampments there. Those ran into some issues because of questions over whether they're on public or private property, and it's the private property owners, one of which is a daycare, were concerned about the presence of this encampment. And then prior to that, on the other side of the Otter Creek, where the Green Mountain Power Substation is in the Marble Works, we had a very active encampment, which had been going for some time, and we had many issues at that one. It was unlike this encampment under the bridge, where I say we've had no overdoses, no arrests. We had at least one sexual assault in that area, a stabbing, arson, and a suicide attempt. That was a hanging that was intervened by one of the residents there. So more out of sight, more out in the woods. So we had issues. This is the only one we are routinely seeing. The rest of the issues with these folks will just be transient in nature around town.
Okay.
No other encampments that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
I'm kind of a theoretical question. If we had a resident in the community, a house resident in this community, such as me or somebody, that did the same amount of damage around town, as frequently around town, would we be more likely to be arrested and put in jail and have a higher bail set? Is there some sympathy to this person because they're unhoused, and that apparently maybe the court system or the state doesn't want to have charge of, and is just releasing them back?
I can't speak for the court, but sentencing for bail, guidelines are very strict. Bail is to be primarily used for a flight risk, for those who are deemed to be a flight risk. To provide context, I tell this story. When I started on this job 2 decades ago for a routine, I'll call it, domestic assault case, where say a husband is in a physical fight with a wife and slaps the wife, we would make an arrest. And routinely, we would contact a judge. Routinely, bail would be set anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 bail. Now, that same scenario, we will be told to cite the offender for the next business day. They will not be held unless there are really extenuating circumstances. We do not see bail very often anymore for very violent crimes. Even we don't see bail that we would see for less violent crimes as recently as 10 years ago. So the court is using their guidelines, and people are being released, routinely being released. Arrest warrants commonly used to have bail attached to them. Now it is much more prevalent. We have somebody with an arrest warrant from somewhere in the state. The direction to law enforcement will be to cite and release them for the next business day. That's not how it used to be. There is a movement, a policy movement towards less bail, and that's statutorily defined to an extent. Now, is there any discretion between individual judges? Of course there is.
So you said we have 2 issues in town, and one of them is long-term, has been here a long time. We now have a relatively short-lived issue that, if it goes long-term, has the potential of causing significantly more harm in our downtown area. We're being held hostage by one person, actually 2. Isn't there a male that seems to visit some properties and we can't get arrested?
It's not one person. It's many people.
What's that?
It's many people.
Okay. So
And they're not all homeless.
we understand, and we've been working on the long-term issue for a long, long time. Many of us in here have hundreds of hours working with the unhoused and through various organizations and stuff like this. But this short one, we need to solve soon, and we need help in solving it. Because again, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort, millions of dollars in this downtown area to make this downtown a viable downtown, and we have it, and we're going to lose it. And you're doing a great job, and your hands are tied and our hands are tied. So we just wait around for the next spree of the next person, or it escalates and somebody gets hurt, or businesses close. And being a business owner, used to be a business owner in this town, we've lived through COVID, and now we're out and we've got a beautiful area, and we need help. We need help. I don't know who can help us, looking at other agencies, but I don't know if there's people that help.
I'm happy to address these questions that you have about what's happening in the courts and prosecution wise. If, when the chief is done.
Are you Eva?
Yes, I am.
Oh, please come forward, Eva.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. So thank you, Chief, because everything he said he probably can express it better than I can. But so every single time, so we work hand in hand with Middlebury Police and law enforcement agencies in this county. And we are prosecuting these cases. The one with the woman that you've been talking about, and folks before that, I can think of the names of some people who are raising their hand and who you're thinking of, and they are all being prosecuted. We're using all the tools available to us that are provided in the statute. And the issue of bail is very interesting in Vermont, because one of the things that makes Vermont so great and unique is that the right to bail is built into our state constitution, which is not true for every state in this country. If the lawmakers are here, I hope they are, because the statutes that are written, there's only very limited circumstances where you can hold somebody in custody without bail, and that's if you're charged with a life felony, which would be a sexual assault, aggravated assaults, homicide, murder, and then in the case of a felony where there's an act of violence against a person. So those are the two statutes that allow us to request a hold without bail. And then when we make that request, we still have to be prepared within a few days to have an evidentiary hearing to show to the court that the amount of evidence we have is strong enough that would withstand the preliminary parts of a trial. So in the cases we're talking about with this woman with 78 involvements, which aren't 78 arrests, but 7 or so arrests recently, the charges that we have pending against her do not fall under any of those categories. And then the issue of bail, as Chief explained very correctly, is this: not only is the amount of bail limited in misdemeanor cases now, but but the statute requires, and the Constitution requires, that bail be set only to ensure the person's return to court for prosecution. So unless we can show that there's a risk of flight from prosecution, not just a risk of flight because they don't have a home to go to, but that they're not local and that they have a record that shows that they routinely fail to appear and fail to show up for court. So those are really specific circumstances. And the judge we have on the bench now, who handles our criminal cases, or the majority of them, applies those statutes very strictly and very literally. And even in the case of the young woman that we were talking about, we have made a pitch for a high bail, and I can't remember if she either posted it, the 500, or it was struck after she was held over the weekend. But the tools we have under the law now are very limited. But hearing from the chief today, and we've been talking over the last few weeks, I find that what he's saying in part is reassuring, that the break-ins and the car vandalism and so forth, those are being prosecuted through the court. And I'm reassured, this is my community too. So I am reassured when he says that those folks are separate from the folks who are living down there. Maybe you have information that I don't have, the chief hasn't told me. Okay. So, you know, I'm interested in being involved in what the select board considers, and the task force that chief is putting together 100%. And I really don't want anyone here on the board or otherwise to feel that it's not being taken seriously by the prosecutor's office, because it is. So we're really keenly aware of what's happening.
Even, let's say you prosecute and she's found guilty. What's the potential sentencing on something like that?
You know, for most misdemeanors, it's up to 2 years. You can't go beyond 2 years if it's a misdemeanor. And depending on what it all depends. So if she has a record of having done a lot of committed time based on even minor offenses, there's a likelihood that she would get some kind of committed time as a sentence. But we don't typically hold people on misdemeanor charges and commit them to DOC sentences. In her particular case, her attorney has requested a court order for a competency evaluation. And it might very well be true that she suffers from a mental disease or illness that makes her incompetent to stand trial. But the time it takes for Department of Mental Health to do the evaluation is months. And I know with new laws that have been passed, I think they should be speeding up. But until recently, it was 9 to 12 months to get one of these evaluations done. I mean, and then she has to show up for the appointment for the evaluation. It has to be coordinated. DMH uses telehealth doctors to do these. So it's not an in-person meeting. She has to be set up with her public defender or her lawyer to do some kind of WebEx or video or Zoom. Those take hours, and then weeks and weeks after the actual meeting to produce the evaluation. And if she's determined, or if the doctor opines that she's not competent, then there'll be a competency hearing. So that'll take time. The court can make a finding, and if the court makes a finding that she's not competent, she can't be prosecuted. And then DMA, Department of Mental Health, has to come in and take over. And then we have to, and again, lawmakers, we want to make sure we have a robust, well-funded Department of Mental Health so that and I think there are some state hospital beds that were recently made available for people who are really, really dangerous in the community. And I don't know if she would necessarily qualify for that type of setting. So, and it all goes back to the social service agencies and folks like CSAC to help out. And that's, so I don't know, best case scenario, maybe she would be under the supervision of the Department of Corrections, with required either through parole or probation to cooperate with her mental health provider, including evaluations, medication, substance abuse, alcohol assessment, treatment, whatever is recommended. And then we're back to relying on the social service folks, and then probation, parole. And while we're waiting for the competency, thank goodness for our police. They really have stepped up, I think, and are doing an amazing job. But so it's not, our office is keenly aware of what's going on and using all the tools we can.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, if the chief was somewhat encouraging, I find that very discouraging.
I know, I feel like I just produced a lot of bad news.
Yeah, no, it's just super unfortunate. I mean, I understand the the presumption of innocence and the rights afforded to the accused and all of this, but it's not a system designed for someone who's willing to burn things down. And it's really incredibly unfortunate when you do have these individuals in your in the middle of your community. Oh yeah.
The other thing the chief tells me is that they're police here in Rutland are keenly aware of where she is, what she's doing. And, not to switch subjects too much, but I mean, it's no coincidence that in June, I think it was June, when we lost all those beds in hotels and motels. And here we are. And I mean, I'm a little surprised to hear today that there's folks living in tents under the bridge that they have alternative housing available. I mean, that to me presents a different situation because they're not really technically homeless, I guess. So,
We didn't have those beds before COVID, though.
Right.
I think blaming it on the hotel voucher program is a scapegoat of not dealing with the issue. I don't buy that.
Conversation is being.
Can you come forward, please?
Thank you.
thank you.
We will.
I think it's your turn, Bill.
Well, I mean, my comment's quick. The conversation is being.
Come to the mic, please.
And if you could just introduce yourself where we can make a record for the minutes, please. I'm Bethany Farrell. I'm founder of the Giving Fridge and Everything Nice. I'm now at 51 Main. I was at the diner next to Town Hall Theater. And the conversation keeps going back to this one woman, but that's been the most recent stretch of instances that have occurred. Some of us have been dealing with this for 3 years. One individual is a town resident. Continues to happen. He's a criminal. She has a mental health issue. She's unhoused. These are different situations and they are not being addressed. And we're the ones left to deal with it.
Has the other one that you're aware of been
No, he just violated
arrested quite a few times as well?
He's been arrested. He's released within hours. He just violated his protection order against someone else a few days ago, back on the streets the next day. So this is not one individual. This is not one unhoused person. That's all I can say.
Thanks, Bethany.
Hello, everyone. I am Heidi Lacey. I'm the Executive Director of Charter House Coalition here in Middlebury.
Can you speak up, Heidi?
Sorry, yes, very.
That's basically
low.
that. Oh, we're on the speakers tonight.
First of all, thank you for having this very thoughtful conversation, and seeing this group tonight does give me some hope that we will work on this together, because that will be the only way that we begin to harness what's in front of us. Brian, you mentioned that Sergeant Baker, Bo, and Kathleen met with the homelessness task force. That is a unit that had been, I believe, very active prior to COVID. And yes, the activities within the last several weeks have really brought forward the need to get back involved. There were 14 of us at that table. I believe there were 11 social service organizations represented that day. And I represent all of us in saying that we want to be part of these conversations. We have limited staffing. We have limited hours that were available. But that's not the right answer for the business owners and or the people within the community. There's no quick fix. What we have done as a coalition, a housing coalition, we have agreed to increase our street outreach. So I do want to be very clear with you all that as service providers, we are serving housed and unhoused individuals that are experiencing very complex circumstances. And that is going to continue to increase as we see hardships come upon people. In terms of the homelessness population that is here among us, as service providers, we are going to be going out into the community on a more regular basis. So through this summer, we began street outreach on a regular basis. We are able to make connections with folks under the bridge, along the Happy Trail. We've traveled to spaces up as far as North Ferrisburg. By receiving a call from a concerned citizen and or another social services agency, we will respond. We have been able to give amongst our organizations probably 3 to 4 hours a week prior to last week's meeting. We've come together to do 5 to 6 days of outreach on a schedule, and this includes organizations such as Hope, John Graham Housing Services, CSAC, Charter House, and Gather, along with Turning Points of Addison County. So the idea is not that we will fix this, but we will be more present. We will continue to work on the rapport and relationships that are necessary to keep putting the services in front of people. And I do want to reiterate what Chief Covey said. The folks that are unhoused right now, they are extremely bothered by what has taken place in this town. They too, just like you and I, truly just want to be safe. They have very different needs than we do when we go home go to our homes, but they want to be safe. They do not want to be seen as vandals or criminals. And I think that the more compassion, just as we're seeing here tonight, those conversations can be continued. We have, I believe the number last week, the latest number in Addison County alone is 146 individuals that are unhoused and or sleeping in vehicles. We know on a regular basis under the bridge that there are 7 to 10 individuals that are camping out. So I say to you that the problem is much bigger than what we are seeing just under the bridge, and bear that in mind. We provided Kathleen as well as Middlebury Police Department with a current updated list of service providers, 3 of whom are available either 24 hours a day or can be paged after normal business hours. And we hope to be available in that way to the point where we can, correct? I think the street outreach, doing that on a regular basis and including some weekend hours as we are able, can also help. We have winter coming. We have people that are not yet on waiting lists in any shelter. So we're trying to work with them on that. The capacity throughout Vermont right now is just full. There is not a shelter in Vermont that has an open bed on most nights. And I'll say one more thing. Charter has seen this summer more of the transient population than in years past. And to your point, it's not because motels are closing. That's not the only reason. We have had a lot of folks who were displaced through the floods over in Washington County. So we are seeing many people from out of our county that are either coming through. We have folks that are traveling back and forth between Burlington and Rutland because, to some people's point, they just cannot be in a shelter setting. So they are just traveling. And I say that the vigilance is important. Pick up the phone and call your social service agencies. Stay in contact with business owners. Hear them. Business owners, please call. I think that trauma-informed care is a overemphasized comment, but it's very vital in making, if something emergent comes up, make a phone call. And we will partner with police, we'll partner with you all to try and come to some emergent solutions, because the long term is more than housing and more than just throwing money at it or arrests or trying to get a judge to agree. So, and I will take any questions.
Can you tell me what you would need from like the select board in Middlebury? What would be the number one thing we could do to help you, support you, assist you?
I think
And if I'm putting you on the spot, that's okay. You can just let us know. But that's really what I'm like. What what can we do as a select board to help and support the organizations that really have the tools to work on the problem?
So I'm going to say that having open communication, I feel like I really hear Rick when he says he has felt alone in this dialogue. I think that we can't pretend that these problems don't exist. So we need to bring forward in a meaningful and intentional way what people are seeing. So I think that really recognizing who the stakeholders are, not being afraid to pick up the phone, do it in a respectful way. That's one big thing. And then I think as a community, we really do need to lean in hard with our legislative folks and just start to talk about this. We have solutions, but we need to be able to support our legislators in making some decisions that really affect not just Middlebury, but a lot of small towns. The collaboration is very important. We need Middlebury businesses. As social service agencies, they are some of our biggest supporters. They need to know that we're here. They need to know that we're going to work with each of you. And I ask you what you need from us. You know, that's a conversation that doesn't get spoken about enough. You know, the fact that we have business owners along Main Street that don't know what Charter House does, or that there's a mediation program through Addison County Restorative Justice that we could be using, that's a problem. So we need to lift up the services with the real understanding that not everyone is going to accept. And in that case, it then becomes an emergent crisis that we're relying on first responders for.
Are there suggestions for the few people I heard Bethany say and Chief has said about this lady that we've spoken about, people that perhaps are in mental health crisis, but then are being combative, destructive, and our courts aren't willing to hold them to enforce care? Are there services that we should know about or that you can bring to bear to help these individuals?
I can tell you at Charter House, our approach in those very situations is going to be very different than what I would ask anybody in this room to do, because it requires an abundance of patience and understanding, right? What is this person going through? We don't always have time when they're throwing bricks in our window to think that way. I would say that there are services available, but if we are not made aware in the moment, our chance is lost. I think a stronger relationship with the Middlebury Police Department and with social services such as CSAC, those are our two pivotal players, because what we're seeing is emergency. We're seeing that crimes are taking place. That's the place to start. You know, this would have been in a silo. We wouldn't be here tonight if one individual hadn't created upwards of $100,000 worth of damage within our town. So again, we need these conversations. I don't have a quick answer, Brian, but it really is bring it forward to social service agencies, as well as the designated agency, correct? The police.
I'm happy to address CSAC.
Yes.
Please.
Rachel.
Please.
Come on up.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thanks Heidi for providing such amazing leadership.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. My name is Rachel Cummings, and I'm the Executive Director of the Counseling Service of Addison County. We're your designated mental health agency, but we also provide some substance use services and developmental services. And I really feel for our business community. We need a thriving business community. It's vital to me as an employer. My employees, want to work in a tight-knit community where they can shop, eat, and live, locally in downtown. So I'm really, I'm sorry of what you're going through. In addition to what Heidi has said, what I want to say is, so as the counseling service, what we are trying to do is create more low barrier access for people to get into mental health care quicker, without a lot of the bureaucratic involvement that can be a barrier for people. But before that can happen, we need people to engage with us. We can't force engagement. And engagement starts with trust and relationship. So I wanted to make sure that our community understands what CSAC is able to do. So we provide low barrier access. For example, we have interns embedded at Charter House. It's a great first step for people to engage with mental health services. We have a program called Rapid Access. Like many social service agencies, we are struggling with huge vacancies. But we're trying to figure out how do we get more people through the door and get them into services more quickly. So within our adult program, if somebody wants to engage and they're in an emergent situation, we can get them and attached with the clinician within a day to a week. Some of you might know that we also have a new program called the Interlude. It's a peer-run mental health urgent care. And the idea around that is to really really intervene before folks need to get to the emergency department, to reduce the numbers of folks showing up at Porter Emergency Department. What I'll say is all our screenings are going through our emergency team. Our Interlude program is peer-run, and there are just some situations because of our model we can't really work with effectively. You probably all know about our emergency team, where we assess for safety and for hospitalization. There's some real high bars to meet to commit somebody into a psychiatric hospital, but we work closely with our Porter partners and our community partners to make sure that we're at the table when somebody's in crisis and needs to be evaluated. And then finally, the state of Vermont is rolling out mobile crisis. And every county will have access to mobile crisis services. And so that will sort of be an enhancement to our emergency team and allow us, with some limits, to be able to hire more staff to be able to respond in the community. Right now, our emergency team, because of our staffing shortages, I've got 2 clinicians who are available 24/7 for the entire county. So you can imagine that's a really limited response. So we're working really hard to try to find more staff, but demographics and our rural nature in Addison County has not been helping. Are there any questions before I keep going?
So you have the funding now for the clinicians, you just need to find some and hire them, or that's a future program from the state?
I have funding to hire more emergency team clinicians now. We're understaffed. I have funding to hire, I'm understaffed in emergency team clinicians within our case management services, within our adult mental health program. Mobile crisis will bring in some additional but limited resources to be able to provide a co-response, a 2-person response to crises in the community throughout the county, not just Middlebury. We don't have a lot of details on that. We're working with our sister agency, that's the grant holder, and have our first meeting with them next Tuesday to understand the details, and then to be able to operationalize it and start hiring.
Any other questions of Rachel?
For interlude, I was just looking at the site. Does somebody need to be seen at CSAC, or they just need to call and get a referral with the emergency person?
They need to call our emergency team line. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And that,
On our website, I'm too nervous to give it out verbatim, but yeah.
okay.
CSAC-ET.org. Yeah.
Right.
Heidi puts me to shame. She
Got
knows it.
And another question for the both of you or anyone else in here who knows, of the individuals that are, or have been rotating under the bridge, are they people who are receiving services already? And if so, or if not, but I mean, I know you can't tell us personal information, but are these people who have sought services and it didn't work out, or do not want services? Do you know?
So
It's 7 people. You probably know them.
It is a combination, and some have very complex mental health issues and or substance use that they are working through or they are stuck in. But I would say that of those that, Sergeant Baker had said, we kind of have regulars that we've come to know. And of those, they are accepting services. I'm just to be very bold and blunt here. Finding shelter when you have been through the level of trauma and being able to live within 4 walls, for some people, that is not an option. And they really may make a choice to not until the weather is so cold that they can no longer be out. The state of Vermont had said last year to all shelters within Vermont that an answer to the capacity issue was going to be tents. And as service providers, for us to hand out go bags and warming kits on a regular basis, we gave out over 70 tents. And that's just our organization last year, right? So I don't think that homelessness is a choice per se. We have to take into account that there are just layers. Quick answer is that of those 7, they are receiving services. They have relationships. That's why I really encourage you all to pick up the phone, especially business owners. If you are seeing something that is disturbing, unsettling, and that you feel a social service person could possibly help. We're not going to the fights. We're not going to crimes, but it's an awareness. Chances are someone within this circle knows the individuals.
I have another question.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Interlude, or, because I noticed I don't think anyone's here from the place downtown.
Gather.
Yeah, thank you. Is Interlude or Gather, are these folks that use those places during the day? Do you know?
So I want to be clear, Interlude is different from Gather in that it's not a
It's
drop-in
not a
and
drop-in.
hangout center.
Right.
It is specifically for people experiencing a mental health crisis. And everybody who goes there is screened by our emergency team. So ideally, one day we want to be able to take referrals from people who are self-referring, but our funding is incredibly limited. I've got funding for 2 years, and it essentially extends my office hours. So I've got peer staff with a little bit of clinical oversight, helping support people in extreme distress until about 6 p.m. at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Gather has very limited hours, but arguably people could.
And Gather's serving the entire community.
Right.
Gather was never meant to be a day station for residents and or unhoused folks.
Right.
And I would say that they have done a tremendous job at making connections with most people.
Yeah. One last question, because I know, and I don't think Chief Covey is still here.
He's behind the
He is. Oh, okay. I couldn't see you. Are these folks the same folks that were over by Marble Works, like when that assault happened? Because I remember when that happened. Are these the same people or?
Some have moved on. We had a population here. We are a popular spot. As I've said in several of meetings, we've had people from afar, I mean out of state, say they specifically came to Middlebury. They've heard about our services here. So some of the folks living on the bridge are Addison County residents. They've been here their whole lives. And so they're very known to us. And yeah, they've been around town at other places as well.
It just occurred to me that part of the allure of the bridge, other than is a roof over your head, is that it is likely safer than being in the woods.
If they were here tonight, they would tell you that.
Yeah, and I want to stress that, the majority of folks who are unhoused are Middlebury, Addison County residents. So I don't want to lose sight of that. We're struggling as a state and as a county to house people. I have lost staff who have accepted jobs who can't find housing and who have had to rescind those job offers. So I want to, remind us that these are our neighbors. These are families that have kids in our schools.
I run the teen center and we have more than one homeless youth right now.
There are 44 homeless youths in Addison County as of Wednesday.
I think we have some that aren't on your list.
But
yes.
Not to take away from why we are here, in the sense of what brought it forward. I just cannot emphasize enough that there's a lot of empathy and there's a team of people, as small as we are, that really want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And we're very open-minded. What works in Middlebury may not have worked I haven't even seen this other letter that you all speak of, but it doesn't have to be the way of every other town. We should dig in and be creative. That's what I would say.
And let me ask you before you give up the chair, but and as well as Chief, and is Eva back in? I saw her step out. There we go. For all of you professionals that are dealing with this issue, and when we look at it, really we're here about the significant ones that are creating acts of vandalism. Is there anything, we have a couple of our legislators here, is there anything from the state perspective that they could do to help in this cause with maybe some of your issues that you're not able to resolve for whatever the reason?
Brian, as a housing coalition, we are working regularly with this round of legislation. There are more housing bills than we've seen probably in the history of Vermont. And our group, we're fortunate that many sit on either social services committees and or housing committees. That's the bigger conversation. I feel that we have a breakfast that we're trying to plan between them and social service providers. They've been very attentive, but they do need to hear from more than just service providers. So I suggest the letters that were written, they were articulated with so much compassion. Those are the types of testimonial that help to move things forward at the state level. So I encourage you all to continue.
We got them.
You got them.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kathleen shared them with us. I read them all.
And what I would say is the community mental health system has been severely underfunded for decades. And but things have shifted slightly over the last few years, thanks to our legislators, especially leadership from Addison County. We've seen some increases to our rates. We had a historic 8% increase to our rates 2 years ago, and then another 4% or 3% with some technicalities of holdback for quality. So a total of 5% last year, and that has made a huge difference. We've poured all of that money and then some vacancy savings and other cuts into staff pay. So when I got to CSAC, our starting wage across the entire agency was around $14 an hour. It's now $19. I'm proud to say that my clinician wages, my mental health clinician wages, are more competitive than they've ever been. I still can't compete with, the hospitals, the school systems, but at least I can, hold my head up and high and say we're offering you a really competitive wage. So I'm really grateful for the leadership and what that has meant for people who work at CSAC and the tenure and the ability to provide really good care. I think what I would like to really focus on this year with our legislative partners, in addition to housing, is around substance use. I mean, we as a state are failing people. There is tremendous amount of suffering happening because of addiction. We need to talk about harm reduction. We need to talk about greater investments in providing, better substance use services, more substance use services.
I would second that.
Heidi, who funds the tents that you give them?
So community members.
Community members?
We've done drives. This year we are working with the United Way of Addison County. But you see our front porch forum requests. So our warming kits are not cheap.
Be nice if we could pass out tents and have a place for them to set their tents up. There's some irony that we're struggling with tent communities and we're passing out tents and just saying, have a tent.
Right. And that comes from the state, Dan, right? We're like, what do we do?
It makes it even more ironic
Right.
that it's a tent here from the state.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Eva, anything on the state's attorney side that, as far as laws that are hamstringing you and your ability to deal with some of the more recurrent problems?
There is a law that prosecutors throughout the state of Vermont have been trying to use to address cases like the ones we're talking about, where someone's charged with an offense and just is released and just repeatedly offends an offense, even if it's low-level stuff or some high level too. And just those violations of conditions of release, there is a statute that says repeated violations of conditions of release could be a basis for a hold without bail. So, but the language in that statute is really quirky and not very clear, and it doesn't really give the court something to hook its to hold on to with and with no, I don't know any prosecutor in the state of Vermont who's successfully got a hold without bail under the statute. Section 7575. But so that one, I mean, it's worth it to, maybe in the next session, legislatively, there could be testimony about how to reword that to address some of these specific cases, because we do bring people back in. I just got 2 calls about violations of conditions of release. And we get calls, we're on call 24/7, and we get calls from Middlebury, other law enforcement agencies about repeat violators, and we have to have that discussion about whether there's an immediate public safety risk. Do we ask to have them lodged? Do we go to a judge tonight to get additional conditions? Or is there something serious enough that would warrant a motion to hold without? And, we do often, like the chief said, we do a cite and release sometimes because, somebody's violated conditions, but they've been minor and nobody's in danger and there's no damage to property. And those are the most of the cases. I understand everyone saying that there's other things happening now that are extreme in you guys' minds, and I get it. And businesses shouldn't feel hostage to those things. But I think we're both, my deputies and I are always trying to think creatively on how to use the laws that we have on the books to address these things. We have the option of putting in curfews. And curfews, if we can identify an address, is really helpful because that can keep somebody literally off the street and at home for certain hours of the day, or 24 hours, 24/7 when we need to, and get more help, folded in for that person. So those tools like that we do often use. But I think for an unhoused person, that I don't know that we can really use that.
When you talk about a public health risk, you go back to the bodily damage and those types of things, the tens of thousands of dollars of property damage. Is that doesn't qualify, or does it qualify?
Crime of violence that's felony level damage, if it's a crime against property, that does not warrant that. There is no statute where you can hold without bail for that. If it's a crime of violence against a person specifically, then that's a different level.
Yeah.
So it's confusing because there's crimes like burglary, which is sort of a crime against property, but if it's a burglary on a dwelling where someone's physically present, then that involves a person.
That happened at my house. And they're smashing the window while there was somebody out there.
We'll take another look at that. Sometimes it depends if it's maybe that's something else the legislature can look at. If it's not a personal dwelling, that falls out into another category too under the law and under the burglary statute. So the lawmakers at one time considered a burglary at a dwelling maybe more serious than a break-in at a business, and maybe that needs to be looked at. And what business are you?
Haymaker.
Oh, okay.
We sold it on Main Street, and let the guy go 2 hours later to a temple.
Chief, anything that you would ask of our legislators?
I would agree with Eva, just for the legislature to take a look at current trends in the use of bail and the criminal justice system as a whole for these for recidivist or repeat offenders. Bail has evolved for a very specific reason. There's findings that bail disproportionately affects those who don't have the ability to pay, meaning those who have money can bail themselves out. Those who don't have money end up sitting in jail. So that's where some of the impetus behind this. But when we're talking about a scenario with such egregious reoffending as we're talking about in some of these cases, I think giving our courts some tools, giving prosecutors and police the tools to give the public some relief, because this does affect everyone else's quality of life and their sense of security. And even though it's not a crime against a person per se, these are serious offenses. To speak to Eva's point, conditions of release are used very, very frequently. We see those in virtually all criminal cases. We had a gentleman awaiting trial for a domestic assault charge, and some of his conditions of release were curfew type conditions and no alcohol. We had at one time upwards of 70 or 80 violation cases and counts of him violating his conditions of release. It was cited almost every day. He left court and violated his conditions across the street by buying alcohol. So the revolving door is frustrating. It's frustrating for us as it is for the community. And I just think we take a hard look. I'm not looking to incarcerate people for low-level offenses, but to, again, try to get some relief to the community where we have someone. If you remember a couple of summers ago, we had a gentleman who keyed something like 30 cars downtown in one day. And we charged him with that. He was not incarcerated. He went to Burlington and did it there. And then he went to other places around the state and did the same thing. He was just a serial car vandalizer, if you will. And he had, as we've been talking about tonight, there's a significant underlying mental health component here. And he was ultimately released. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage he did. He was released each time because it did not meet the criteria, as you've explained. So I think we do, as a state, need to take a look at that so that we can give some options to be exercised judicially. Don't want
Okay. I guess I'd let you return to your seats and get off the hot seat.
Do you mind if I come up since
Please,
the
Ruth.
legislature has been invoked multiple times? Amy and Julie have more to say.
Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. I talk pretty loud, but just in case. You all know me, but I'm not sure everyone else knows me. I'm Senator Ruth Hardy. I'm one of the 2 senators that represent the Addison District. I am the chair of the Senate Government Operations Committee, and I serve on the Health and Welfare Committee. And I live in East Middlebury and have spent much time working with many of you on issues about involving our community.
And I am Jubilee McGill. I'm the state representative. I represent kind of that side of Main Street, and also Bridport, New Haven, and Weybridge. And I grew up in Middlebury, so been here all my life. And I sit on the House Human Services Committee. And then my day job is I work for John Graham Shelter. So I kind of see the issue from all sides.
And Representative Amy Sheldon is over there. She represents the town of Middlebury, along with Representative Robin Chai. So I wanted to provide a little bit of information, then respond to some of the things I've heard, and then certainly answer any questions you all might have. I think one thing I would really like to clarify some of the things that have been said about bail tonight, because I think there's a little bit of confusion about it. I am not an attorney, so I really encourage you all to speak with your attorney to get their take on it. But I did reach out to the Legislative Council, which are the legislators' attorneys and are experts on the state statutes because they wrote them. But one thing that's really important, and State's Attorney Vikos mentioned this, but I just want to clarify and underscore this, that excessive bail is prohibited by our state constitution. It is not statutory. It is not something that the 3 of us in this room could introduce a bill about and change next session. We would have to introduce a constitutional amendment to the Vermont state constitution. And as State's Attorney Vikos mentioned, it is fairly unique to Vermont, and it is longstanding in our constitution. So it's not, as was suggested by a couple speakers, a recent trend. It is something that's been in our constitution for a while, and that is that excessive bail can't be, and I'll read from section 40 of our constitution, excessive bail shall not be exacted for bailable offenses. All persons shall be bailable by sufficient sureties, except as follows, and these are the exceptions. A person accused of an offense punishable by death or life in prison. So that is a big deal, right? And then may be held without bail when the evidence of guilt is great. So if evidence of guilt is great for a life imprisonment or punishable by death offense. And then the second one is a person accused of a felony, an element of which an act of violence against another person. So this is what was just being talked about. It's not against property. It's against another person. May be held without bail when evidence of guilt is great and the court finds, based upon clear and convincing evidence, that the person's release poses a substantial threat of physical violence to any person, and that no condition or combination of conditions of release will reasonably prevent the physical violence. A person held without bail prior to trial under this paragraph shall be entitled to review de novo by a single justice of the Supreme Court forthwith. And then a person awaiting sentence or sentence pending appeal may be held without bail for any offense. So if you've already been sentenced and are awaiting sentence. So these are the constitutional provisions about holding somebody without bail. And so they're very strict, and all judges have to follow them. This is our state constitution. So that means that you have to, if you can't hold somebody without bail, and a judge can set bail, but except that our state constitution also says that bail cannot be excessive. So you can't set excessive bail or bail that could be determined by a court to be excessive for an offense that is not a high-level offense. So even if a judge sets bail, somebody can post bail and get out without bail. And as Chief Covey so accurately just mentioned, the people who are least likely to be able to post bail are people without the means. And so bail becomes an issue for holding people who have no money, whereas people who do have money can post bail and get out. So it's a very inequitable means of enforcement in our judicial system, especially if bail is excessive. So I just wanted to give that overview, and I'm not suggesting anything about any of these individual cases. I just want to be clear to people in the room. But I think that the sort of conversation about why is there not bail, or why aren't people being held without bail? The answer is largely we have a constitutional provision that requires that people cannot be held without bail except for in very specific circumstances. So
I think that the concern was bail being set at 0, not that it being set at you can't possibly make bail.
Right, and the level of jail or bail is at a judge's discretion, and all judges know that they have to be able to justify the level at which they set bail and have it be, be in line with whatever the offense is.
Sure.
And so I think that is according to our Constitution. So it's not a statutory provision; it's a constitutional provision. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out is about holding somebody for a mental health evaluation. There's also really high standards, and these are statutory standards, but high standards for when you can hold somebody for a mental health evaluation against their will. It is in very rare circumstances that can happen. No person may be subject to involuntary treatment unless he or she is found to be a person in need of treatment. And then there are statutory requirements for determining who is a person in need of treatment. They means a person who has a mental illness, and as a result of that mental illness, his or her capacity to exercise self-control, judgment, or discretion in the conduct of his or her affairs and social relations is so lessened that he or she poses a danger of harm to himself or others. And then there's some more detail. But that is also a very high bar. And I think one of the things that's important to keep into perspective is that in fairly recent state history, we were actually a state that held a lot of people against their will in institutions right down the road at the Brandon School of Training. And this came with a hugely high cost to generations of Vermonters. And so I think that we as a state are quite careful because we are very aware of our history of holding people against their will for what might have been perceived to be a mental illness. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context, both constitutional and historical context. And there are other people in the room who are much more expert on the mental health statutes than I am. But I'm happy to answer more questions about that. But I also wanted to talk to you about what we are doing, what Jubilee Jubilee and I have worked on in our committees, because our committees do overlap, and a lot of these issues are issues that we work on. And I also just wanted to say that I personally, and I know that other legislators are too, are in constant contact with our social service agencies, with our law enforcement. The first person I called when I got Kathleen's email was actually Chief Covey to get his perspective on this situation. And one of the things that I was heartened about is that the people who are, as far as I've heard, the people who are living in the tents are not the ones that are causing the most of the sort of criminal behavior in town. They are trying to live as peacefully as possible. And I think it's really important for everybody to remember that people who are unhoused and or people who are living with a mental illness are more likely to be victims of crime than perpetrators of crime. And so I'm sure that people who are living in tents in our town are feeling unsafe as well. And I think that's an important perspective to remember. But I'm in constant contact with Rachel, for example, all the time about these issues. I was really happy to hear her say, we have put a lot of money recently into mental health services, provided the 8% increase to our designated agencies, including CSAC, in the 2022 budget, and then again, a 5% increase in this current 2023 budget. We are trying to provide sufficient funding for our mental health agencies, and there's still a lot more to go, but it is something that is a budget priority. Certainly, I think I can speak for both of us that this is true. We also are keenly aware of the situation with housing in our state. Over the last 4 years, we have, I think, put over 500 million, some incredible amount of money into housing, both in rental relief and also temporary housing solutions, the hotel program, and also for permanent housing solutions. And that's not to say that that is enough, but it is something that we're keenly aware of. Both Representative McGill and I spent the day last Thursday hearing testimony about the housing situation and the motel hotel program, and what is going on with that. And one thing I do want to say, I've heard a lot of people saying we need to talk to our legislators about how to fix this. I would encourage you also, there is another branch of government at the state level, and that's the executive branch. They are a full-time, year-round branch of government. We are in session for 5 months, and we have no staff as legislators. We have no offices as legislators, and we get paid very little as legislators. But our executive branch is in office all year round. They have lots of staff, and we have asked them repeatedly for a plan about how to deal with the housing situation in Vermont. And repeatedly, the Department of Children's and Families, the Agency of Human Services, and the governor's office have failed to give us a plan.
And Ruth, it is late, and we're here to talk about really not housing. I mean,
yes, I hear that,
love your
Mr. Carpenter,
soapbox,
but I'm not on a soapbox. I'm telling you that there's another branch of government that you didn't invite to this meeting. And so while I'm happy to hear about legislative solutions, I have not yet heard of a solution to the housing situation from our executive branch either. But so the situation in Middlebury, I think, is really a situation that I heard some really good. I was really happy to hear what Heidi was saying about her work and the coalition that has been restarted, because I know that they have been in action before, but the coalition that has been started to start addressing this at the local level.
And I think we are engaged at the local level.
That's great.
Would you be interested in taking up something that would provide us a tool to deal with these repeat offenders. You just said that we are limited at the state level by, or at the town level by state constitution, but I think that constitution was written at a time when we weren't dealing with mental health and drug crisis. And I think that the state leadership, which includes you, and I'm speaking to you because that's why you're here, because you heard that we are asking something of our state legislators. I think you need to take that up and give us a tool to deal with it for safety and property preservation at the local level.
So
I don't
the
think you can
state
shed that.
constitution, there is a process for amending the state constitution.
Help us with it.
It's a 5-year process.
If it takes 5 years, we need to do it.
I mean, I think it would be the reason that we have these constitutional provisions. There's a lot of historical reasons. I think it would be really difficult to change the Constitution. I think that if you're interested in a constitutional amendment, I'm certainly happy to talk to you about it further. But I don't know that that's the solution to the problem that's right here in front of us right now.
Interested in solving the one-offs right now,
Yeah.
which are the ones that are terrorizing our community. There's a lot of bigger issues that you spoke to, a lot of good things going on in that, and that we are very grateful for. But right now, our community is terrorized by a handful of people, and we do not have the tools to address that at the local level, and which is why, and you pointed out that we are hamstrung by the laws and Constitution and the interpretation of those laws by our legal division that has been appointed. And so we don't have a choice on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that State's Attorney Vikos talked about how they're prosecuting these cases, and I'm certainly happy to talk to you about a constitutional amendment, but that would be a very long haul. And I think that right now, some of the tools that we need to make sure that we're using to address this situation are a lot of the local tools that were really talked about, and the sort of ongoing work about providing safe and affordable housing for people in our communities, and safe and accessible mental health services in our communities.
We do have an agenda. I know Karen represents the business people, and if rather than bring up all of the business people, I would like to just give Karen an opportunity to speak for the business people. Is that acceptable by the business crowd here?
Can I add one more thing? State's Attorney Vikos mentioned Section 7575 about bail. And right now it does include that you can be held if your release would constitute a threat to the integrity of the judicial system, which is not part of the Constitution and what it lays out as why bail might be prevented. I don't know if that's gone through review, but maybe something about the health and safety of the community could be added in statute, and perhaps it would pass constitutional muster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, willing to take a look at that and talk to our legislative attorneys about it. And this is the first, her citation of that is the first time I'd heard of it. So I'm certainly happy to look at that and see if there's a provision. I don't know how it would interact with those constitutional provisions, but I think that's a good place to start. And appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for all the work you're doing over there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we got a lot of challenges still.
Possible to say something for just 10 seconds?
Come forward, please, Rick, because we can all hear you here, but there are people watching out in the TV land.
I just want to clarify something that you said.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the tents are committing crimes, and they're committing them on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for them whether they feel safe or not, but these handful of people are creating a very unsafe environment for all of us, and we all feel unsafe because of them. So I just wanted to make sure that this didn't go down as what you said to be accurate.
Okay, well, what I was repeating was what the chief of police told me. So that's what the chief of police
Our letters are
said.
in the packet.
No, I've read the letters, but what the police chief said was that the people who are in the encampment are not creating the.
Gentleman in my packet that lives in the tent encampment.
Okay, I don't know who the picture is of. I saw the picture, but what I was repeating was what I heard and what the police chief testified to tonight at this microphone was that the people in the tents are not the ones that are creating the. That's what I heard him say.
No, I'm not trying to portray the people in the tents as angelic. To say they're not committing crimes is not accurate. I'm saying the crime spree downtown, this one individual is responsible for 7 arrests, multiple offenses. We've been called, like I said, to fights with the group in the encampment. We can't prove because they won't cooperate and give us statements. I'm not saying they are not committing any crimes. We've seen evidence of drug use there, but I'm saying this crime spree that took place downtown with the cars being vandalized, we can attribute most of that to one person. There's been some other incidents downtown that we know weren't her. We know that for a fact. This is a community that still has crime. Certainly, there's a crime spree that occurred in East Middlebury that had nothing to do. No, it's not. So the crime spree in East Middlebury had nothing to do with, and I call it crime spree, had nothing to do with these folks in this encampment. Sure, do they commit crimes? I'm sure they do. Have they been arrested for anything? Have we had probable cause to charge them with any crime? No, we haven't. That's what I said at the microphone.
Our frustration as a business community is beyond if this is characterized as because of one individual. That is fundamentally false. And so to walk out of here feeling as if that is the message that this community has will send every single one of us home thinking that this environment is not conducive to running a business. Period. End of statement.
Okay.
If that's the message that we want to deliver, then great. Because we're also the community sitting right here that will do anything you can to support the work of these individuals. We are the first to step up and we open our doors every single day to them. So please do not characterize us as not having empathy or understanding.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that, but.
Also, please, when you say you're in touch with the service communities every day, you reached out to, did anybody here after we submitted our letters get a call from any of our legislators? Please raise your hand.
Robin Shai replied to my email
Thank
from
you.
Italy.
Go on.
So
We are feeling like this is not being heard.
I was repeating what I heard from the chief of police. And if I misunderstood what I heard from the chief of police, then I apologize. But what I heard him say and what he told me when I had the conversation with him is that the crimes that were happening were the result of 1 or 2 individuals, not the people who were living in tents underneath the bed. And that's what I was told by the chief of police. So that's fine. I appreciate hearing that.
That's related to those 28 incidents that I cited.
Right. So, but the.
Over 1 person, 6 that we believe were.
Which she does live in the tents.
From time to time, correct. But again, we've spoken to them. They don't want her there. She's currently enrolled.
Right. So
it's to say that all those vandalism, those cars were related to the group as a whole. That's not accurate.
Okay, I would like to just kind of then let Karen speak for the business community.
Amy's on her way up as well. Hi, everybody. Karen DeGay with the Better Middlebury Partnership.
Amy Ryan.
Also Better Middlebury
Also
Partnership.
Better Middlebury Partnership. And I own a business located on Main Street that I think most of you know. I'm encouraged by the conversation. I want to say that. I'm encouraged by the fact that the select board was willing to put this issue on the agenda to have this discussion. I fully recognize that you as a government body are not going to fix what's happening downtown. What I've heard tonight is that we have really talented people at our social service agencies who are reaching out. They're being proactive. They're actively being involved in the situation. Excuse me. What I've heard from the state's attorney is that their hands are tied. What I've heard from Chief Covey, my hands are tied. What I hear from our legislators is it's a constitutional amendment. What I haven't heard is Chief Covey, who's indicated that these people, whenever they are doing something wrong, are issued a citation that has absolutely no teeth. So if there's some statutory change that we can make to make sure that these citations have teeth and are punitive, frankly, if you're doing something wrong and you're smashing a brick through somebody's window, you have to pay for it. Just as if I did it, somebody's going to sue me and I'm going to have to pay for it. So there has to be some solution in the immediate future to be able to try to deter some of this vandalism, frankly, terrorism. I mean, I feel horrible even saying that, knowing what's happening in other parts of the world. But this is Middlebury's bubble, and this is how we feel. We feel unheard. We feel terrorized in our own community. I'm one of the lucky ones. I don't have a business that operates outside of business hours. I haven't been vandalized. But my heart goes out to these folks. They are, most of our businesses in downtown, as you know, operate on slim margins. Some have only gotten started because of grants that you have provided to them. And they won't be able to sustain their livelihood if we as a community don't come together and try to figure out how in the immediate future we can help keep our unit together. Our downtown is relying on it. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't have any of the answers probably. As Mary pointed out, we're as business owners, when CSAC has a bocce tournament, guess what? $500 goes to CSAC. When Hope is doing a drive, up $250 to Hope. We're the people that are supporting those agencies. We will continue to do that. We need our legislative body to continue to do that. We need our town government to continue to do that in the budgetary process. I don't know where the answers are. I'm glad this conversation is happening. I'm sorry. That's my blood's a little bit boiling.
I just want to start out by saying thank you to all of you for having this conversation. We have wonderful social service agencies. We're so lucky to have them. I have been part of this world, so to speak, for 3 weeks. And I have cried more in those 3 weeks than I have in years. I don't know how these people do this job, but we are so grateful that they do. It is a really discouraging, complex situation that we have here. I would love to come to you with actual solutions or asks. We don't have much to ask at this point. We're still in the listening phase ourselves. The other group that I really want to thank is the businesses for showing up. I want to thank them for writing these letters. I want to thank them for sharing these perspectives. There has to be made a very clear tie in the state of Vermont between economic development and vibrancy in our communities and addiction support, mental health support, housing support. Without those things intersecting, we have bubbles, we have silos. And that's what we're sort of seeing that across the board right now. It's either a mental health or addiction problem, or it's an economic development problem. But guess what? When the businesses pull out, as they are in many of our communities, all of a sudden communities are left saying, well, what happened? Well, this is what happened. We considered it this or this, not this. And that's what really needs to start to happen. We have to start looking at this more holistically. We all have to be rowing in the same direction in this community. So I'm also encouraged by the creation of the task force. I was grateful to be given a seat on that to represent the businesses' voices. I think it is absolutely critical that we elevate that perspective within every aspect of this discussion. And so we do have a few asks, one of which is continue to consider those businesses' voices as we move forward as a community. These conversations need to be held in public. This is not a thing that we should feel ashamed of. We are part of the solution here. I've heard a lot of people say, well, we don't want to, have people not visit Middlebury or think that Middlebury is unsafe. Well, it's really hard to solve a problem if you don't talk about it. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out how to figure this out as a community. We appreciate the endorsement and the support of the select board in this. I really appreciate that you wanted to hear from businesses. I think that's really telling of where your heads are at in terms of prioritizing their voices in this. One of the things that we would like for you to consider is potentially appointing somebody within the town to sort of hold this. This is really hard. There's a lot to this. And what that looks like, we're not really sure, but it can't it can't be nobody. It's got to be somebody that's really paying attention and at the table. And then the other thing that we want you to consider is, does town funding exist to help businesses to make payments on the damages that have been done? Caroline has a great example of Haymaker paid the $1,000 deductible for her employee's car. Well, that's okay for the first one, but what happens next? I agree. I don't want this to be seen as a one-person problem. She's gone, maybe. No. What happens if there are 10 next year that are throwing bricks through windows next summer? If we can't figure out how to handle the one person, how do we handle additional folks that maybe are having the same kinds of issues? So I really would encourage the select board to continue to have this conversation throughout the winter. I don't want this to be the encampments are gone because it's winter, so this isn't on the forefront of our thinking. We have to continue to think about this. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the thing I would reiterate is I think the timing is key. You know, we have dealt with this sort of heightened awareness for the last couple of weeks. In the last few days, maybe things have, quote unquote, settled down, but this is going to continue to happen. What we have heard from the powers that be is a certain combination of drug use and added to the mental health instability of the individual who caused most of the damage is on the rise. This is not unique to Middlebury. It's not unique to this one person who, mixed some drugs. This is something that's actively happening in the drug using community. So we will see this more and more and more. So to Karen's point, we have to nip it in the bud now as best we can as a small community, as a state community. I don't know, but I don't think sitting back and letting time go by is the answer. I think we need to actively pursue some real solutions.
Sorry, we don't know what those are.
Well, let me try.
Now it's past my bedtime.
Your bedtime. We still got an hour's work. Let me just try wrapping it up a little bit here. Number one, really appreciate the turnout. I think your voices have been heard, not just of business people, but also of all of the service agencies, that they are here to help us. The board very much cares about this issue. When we heard about it, Kathleen, myself, the board, we got engaged on it. Chief has been the point man on this for us, but everybody's engaged on the topic. Through the engagement, we've increased our outreach. Number one, more patrols. You can't have security if you don't have presence, and Chief is doing that. The department is doing that. Thankfully, we're in a little better position health-wise of our officers, I believe, than what we've had sometimes, and so he's got a little bit, but we still need some more. We're recruiting for more officers, and that would help us, because for what we're doing here, which we have a vandalism expense issue, so we're surging forces. But long term, does that mean other sections of the community? I think some of you may have been in here when we had the speeding in some of our neighborhoods. We have a number of issues that we're grappling with, but this is not going to just be put off just because we go a few weeks without having vandalism. Our social service agencies have stepped up. We've re-engaged. I think COVID knocked us down, and everybody kind of was lethargic about getting it re-energized. There was lots of other issues going on, but this is an issue that now everybody's surging. They're meeting and trying to help us and share what's out there. On the town level, we are talking about putting observation cameras into some of our public parking areas. And I know that maybe that's not popular with others, but Kathleen and I have talked about budgeting some money in this coming budget for this coming fiscal year for installing security cameras, more security cameras that would allow for remote observation by the police, for instance. Also, give us sure data when vandalism occurs, so that Eva has what she needs to ensure better chances of prosecution. And certainly businesses, I mean, I've had stuff stolen out of my yard out on Exchange Street, and typically high dollar stuff. And we've just put in new security cameras. They're not as expensive as they used to be. We put them in ourselves. So, I mean, not everybody's handy, but that should not be cost prohibitive, and it certainly is helpful for when you do have instances. We're talking
Can I
about.
make one comment on the security camera issue? I think there's a number of folks in the room who own businesses who have installed pretty high-tech security cameras. But as a business owner, I don't feel like it's necessarily my responsibility to bear the cost or the burden of surveilling the street side. So I hope during that conversation that the town's talking about public space surveillance and not relying on business owners to surveil the streets necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, we might be talking about getting to be like London. So
Bring it.
That is
you are.
that
Every
is a
street
discussion. We'll see how we deal with just getting our parking
Sorry
areas.
to interrupt your flow.
But point made. We're talking about maybe expanding like the parks ordinance, but that, as you heard this evening, has some other issues, because there are legal rights to utilize public space, and where would we provide that space? So I would just promise to you that we're not going to let this drop, and with the other balls in the air, this one is a big enough ball that I think we'll be able to juggle and catch it each time and keep it up and keep that discussion moving forward. I wouldn't expect that we're going to have a miracle and be able to wave our wand and this, within 2 weeks, it's all gone. But I do think that we'll make progress together on this. And we have talked about, we're trying to brainstorm, how do we create some fund to help businesses? That's also complex. We're working on if that can happen and how that happens and where that seed money comes from. And so we are having those discussions, and everything's under consideration, as well as stuff that maybe there's something out there that we haven't thought of yet outside the box. So.
And I would just end to say that, as business owners, we all have a unique perspective on what's happening, as you read in our letters. So I think everybody in this room would say, if you have a question, call us, reach out to us. We'd rather be a resource ahead of the game than come back and say, you missed it or you screwed it up or whatever the case might be. So just the same as we say to our legislators, we want to be the resources and we want to have those questions asked of us so that things aren't happening in a vacuum.
Okay.
Can I just make an ask? I would love to talk with all. I did read all the letters. I don't have I can look up business contact, but if you wouldn't mind,
I can get that for you.
Getting me kind of contact information.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one thing about communicating with the select board, everybody knows that we have these read ahead packages that we get everything you send to Kathleen or Brian or anything like that. And if you're sending a group email to all of us, and I don't know about everybody, but I don't usually respond to emails when it goes to every select board member. We kind of work as a group. We'll discuss those before meetings and discuss them in the meeting. But don't be afraid to reach out to us individually. If you want a one-on-one conversation with us, send us an email, call us individually. Otherwise, you're going to get this group talk here. And I do appreciate you all being here, because we have very quiet meetings. We're in here a lot by ourselves.
What's the meeting rule? Like, you can't have so many people. You can't have more than 4?
You have a quorum.
Oh, you can't have a quorum.
We
Okay.
can't talk together as a quorum.
Okay. So
You can
So
invite as many as 3.
When you-
3 invitees,
when you
okay.
email us all together, then
That's a
that's
meeting.
a public
That's document.
record.
That's a public
So
record. We can't.
we
So then
can't
we
do that.
can't
Can't
respond.
respond to that.
Gotcha. Everybody get that? Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to item number 7.
Oh, you're not all staying for this?
Oh, no, we still have like an hour.
This is really the exciting stuff that's going to happen here. Oh, man.
Not even any buns. I mean, come on.
I guess we'll let the room.
You know how to clear a room. Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Really good meeting, Brian.
Eva, thank you very much for coming.
Temporary fix, but
So again, who's part, Jason's drops?
I mean, I'm down there. We're all down there. I saw the cars. I was like going to the lower lot.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Good night, neighbor.
Oh, you guys are neighbors?
Oh, okay.
Judy.
You're staying?
Jason is representing the Churchills.
Oh,
Excellent.
evening, Jason.
Well, you're up, I think.
Yeah, 15 seconds.
Hold 1 second. Judy,
I won't take the full 10 minutes.
let me,
So.
Jason, let me just address, Judy, I see your hand up. I had a lot of people here. Wasn't able to allow everybody to speak this evening. So if you care to reach out to me or come back to the next meeting, but we need to move on with business here. Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
Hi, Jason LaRock, Otter Creek Engineering. I'm here representing Kelly Churchill and the Churchill Family Trust. About a year or so ago, Kelly reached out with a failed septic system on the family property at 1 Forest Lane. We looked at a variety of options, working with neighbors, trying to get an easement that was acceptable to get down to the municipal system. We did test pits looking for an on-site solution. And while we could make something work, we couldn't make something that was fully compliant. The site's complicated by that 10-inch transmission main from the wells to the Chipman Hill tank. So that posed some problems with siting an on-site system. And as far as, just working around that, if we were going to take a different route. So what we've settled on, which at this point seems to be the most viable option, is requesting an easement on the property to the north. It'd be a gravity sewer line, a sewer manhole on a property owned by Dale Goddard, which we've had conversations with Dale. He's amenable to an easement. We'd do a directional drill. That property that I'd like the easement on is pretty wooded, overgrown. So the idea would be that we directional drill it just off the property line. So there'd be very little impact. What this allows is for that property to connect to the municipal system. Also, the property to the south, there's been some extensive conversations with that landowner about eventually connecting to the municipal system as well, because all on-site systems will fail at some point.
Yeah.
It's the sad reality of wastewater in Addison County, especially.
So Jason, I was able to get that up on the screen.
So the area we'd be looking for an easement. There's already this piece right in here, which you worked with the Churchills to address some encroachment for this garage not too long ago.
Oh, thanks for reminding us.
Yes. This parcel, town parcel is 14.4 acres, and it's a stretch for about 220 feet. We'd be requesting a 20-foot easement centered on the pipe. I believe we can get it in without any problems with there's also a power line that runs through here. We shouldn't have any problems with the poles or with, there's a shed, a sizable shed that I'm being told doesn't have a foundation on the town property as well, that is owned by this property owner. We can get that line in without creating a problem with any.
What did you just say?
So it's not just tents.
Sorry, blur. Okay.
So once again, it's a small stretch, about 200 feet where we need an easement to make that connection. And ultimately, it would probably be 2 houses that would connect. Right now, we're asking to put this in, so it's a single.
So there's 2 darker lines on this.
Yep.
Are both of those sanitary sewer?
So what we would do is coming out of the existing house,
Yeah.
tied to the existing piping,
Yeah.
run on his property a 6-inch main down to the town property.
Yeah.
Put a sewer manhole on an easement on Dale Goddard's property, run diagonally across to the sewer manhole, which is down here.
Wow. Okay.
Which was just replaced as part of the Colonial Drive project.
Gotcha. Okay.
Unfortunately, there's, the other option would be to go, I believe, way over here is the structure.
Gotcha.
So, in this area, there's an extremely wide right of way. So, this section would just be in the town right of way.
Gotcha.
To do that, other than, work in the right of way permit.
Right. Thanks.
That pipe goes under the shed underneath?
So no, we'll be in front of the shed. I believe it will be in front of the shed. It'll be directional drilled, so we could go directly under the shed too. I'd prefer not to, to run it out and around if possible. Just for
I mean, the shed that's sitting on the town property, you don't want to go around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go through it. Heather?
So, this is all still gonna be maintained as private service?
Correct, that is the intent.
There's not gonna be anything written in here that this is gonna be a public utility that will need to be maintained and et cetera by the town?
The intent would be that this is a private service.
Can we
serving
just make sure to?
Serving the Churchill
Yeah,
property.
so if something goes wrong, then it,
Yeah, we're not repairing it.
right. Yeah. And there can't be any surprise that we're not repairing it either, please.
No, and Mr. Churchill's
There's
aware of
always
that.
to be a surprise.
And so there's good, obviously from the lines, there's good gravity flow, but you would
Sure looks like it.
install or anything for like backflow preventing, et cetera.
So it would be a standard gravity sewer line. There wouldn't be any backflow prevention. You typically wouldn't do that on a sewer system, on a sewer service in general.
Okay.
And in this case, there's no real risk of the municipal system backing up into Mr. Churchill's house.
Because there's
It's probably
pretty good drop.
It's probably 80 feet in elevation.
We have a hand by Fred Dunnington.
Okay.
Hello, you can hear me?
Hey, Fred.
Yeah.
It was mentioned that there was another property that was going to be served by this line ultimately. Where is that?
So it would be, Mr. Churchill's had conversations with the property at 2 Forest Lane. The intent is not to connect them at this point, but the original plan was we were going to run on the south side of the Miller property.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, if you could throw that on, please.
Okay, I know where that is. Thank you. I just asked my question.
So this is more so if, it's being sized so that in the future, if it's necessary, they could make that connection to this line.
That won't become public at that time, the
I
line.
don't believe so, unless the town specifically wanted to take it over.
Yeah. Oh. Fred, are you all set?
Yes, that answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Fred. So,
Sorry about that.
are you starting to make a motion? Before you make a motion, I'd like to just say the last time that we gave them an easement, because we've given them 2 easements, I believe. And the first one we gave them gratis. The last one we had a fair market value. I would think that this ought to be a fair market value easement as well.
Well, that wasn't an easement we granted. We gave them, we sold them the land.
Right.
Yeah.
We sold them the land on that.
With restrictions, yeah.
We sold them a couple of feet of land.
Fence on it.
Still, it's an easement that's encumbering the community property.
I'm not arguing that point.
I just think at some point that we are going to be setting a precedent if we start giving a lot of easements away for free.
It's gonna be
But
expensive.
we already set a precedent on how we've dealt with previous easement requests. I'm just thinking of like Vermont Gas and stuff.
Vermont Gas served our community. This serves one household. I mean, those are quite different.
Potentially 3.
But we have
Oh,
given
it's
Vermont gas
serving one
easement
household.
for property.
Well, that's-
What's that?
I mean, we have given easements that serve one property or one building for Vermont gas.
No, they went around it because we wouldn't give it to them.
That one building, but other buildings.
Uh-huh.
would.
No, I was there.
I'm not aware of a single one. Did we do a single?
I believe there was one at Bakery Lane that had to go across the town piece of property.
I don't know.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't want to be. I don't want to all of a sudden start.
Yeah.
I'm not talking a lot of money. I'm just talking our fees, our legal fees, and just a fair market value.
So what you have done in lots of circumstances is have them pay all of the fees associated, all of the legal fees. This will require a 1061 notice in the newspaper and a 30-day waiting period.
Yes, I'm totally on board with them paying the associated fees.
For whatever the majority is in favor of, let's have a motion and move forward.
Do we need to include that in here?
I think so.
Does it include here now?
I don't think so.
No.
I'll add it. Whoops. My computer says it's better. I move to authorize the proposed sanitary sewer easement agreement between the town of Middlebury and the trustee of the Teresa F. Churchill Family Trust and of the Raymond C. Churchill Family Trust to establish a wastewater connection to the town's collection system for the One Forest Lane property, with the request that the town be reimbursed for all fees, legal and otherwise associated with the request for the easement.
Second. Any questions or comments on it? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for hanging out so long.
No problem.
Kathleen, are you up on this grant?
Actually, Zeke is with us.
Yeah, I guess.
Thanks for hanging out, Zeke.
Wow.
Watching a baseball game at the same time. Don't give him.
We're going to need that kind of endurance to get the project all done.
Jesus.
Hey, Zeke. We do. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you all, and happy to wait. That was an important conversation, obviously. And again, apologies for 2 weeks ago when I did stand you up. So the least I could do was wait through this. I'm glad I did. I mean, before I start, I just want to say, in light of the rest of the meeting tonight, we have obviously been really involved in the homelessness crisis, specifically in Chittenden County as sort of larger scale. landlords of affordable housing. My partner and I are 2 of 5 founding board members of a new agency that works in homelessness prevention. We are leasing up 2 buildings of almost 100 units in South Burlington right now that are taking 20 through the Chittenden County Coordinated Energy Program. So we're working on households that have previously been unhoused, and if there's a voice we can add to this conversation, again, ours is not in extending outreach to people who are unhoused, but instead on homelessness prevention for people that are in our communities and what it means to rehouse people. I think the big takeaway I have from tonight is housing, mental health counseling, substance use counseling all together are individually insufficient but all necessary. And so we're definitely here trying to work on the housing supply piece. What we're here for tonight specifically is a grant program run by DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. The Agency of Commerce and Community Development. This was actually a program that was approved 2 legislative sessions ago, and we've been working with Jen and Kathleen to ride ACCD to get this program out. It's a small program that we're trying to apply for a significant award from. It's a soft cost reimbursement program, meaning it's not for hard construction, it's for planning and soft costs associated with development, architecture, legal, things like that. And they really want to see the partnerships between private developers, municipalities. And I don't think there's a better example around the state right now of a municipality and private developer affordable housing project happening. This is certainly the biggest and one everybody around the state is proud of, and I know everybody in town too. So the application is a $500,000 application. Worked with Kathleen and Jen and Emily on putting together the components of this. We're showing the budget with about $1.7 million of eligible costs and hoping to open up the conversation about either a $500,000 maximum grant. Like the Community Development Block Grant and the Community Revitalization and Recovery Program grant beforehand, it's a municipal application with us as a sponsor, and thus seeking board approval, draft application, and I think it's in your packet for Kathleen to submit as town manager. Deadline for submission is October 27th. I originally got under September calendar because it was originally an October 1st deadline. They extended it to October 27th. So happy to answer any more questions. Otherwise, want to be as canonical with your time as possible.
Questions?
I feel like we might breeze through the rest of the agenda.
Well, we did get a primer on this the last meeting, and it's all good news. So
This is a good one. This is easy.
Motion.
I'd like a motion then.
I'll move for the select board to support the proposed application by Summit Properties to the state of Vermont's 2023 Community Partnership for Neighborhood Development Grant Program for the planned housing development project on Seminary Street Extension.
Second.
Seconded. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Muted? Okay.
I guess that was
Good.
seven.
Yeah,
It
I
sounded-
did-
it was
did
quiet.
sound like
Yeah.
All still awake?
Yeah.
What?
Okay, thanks, Zeke, and good luck.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add for you all, and I got this to Kathleen yesterday, I think, while everybody in the town was off, so it may have snuck into the packet today, is an updated select board support letter. Ostensibly the same as the one that you submitted for the community development block grant. Updated.
Can you just change the date on it, Zeke? That's fine, I think.
We're signing it. We're signing it now. You-
Also, just an introduction to who it's addressed.
Hey, Zeke, you just don't know how,
Reasons for support.
you don't understand how quick and efficient Kathleen is. It's going across our desk for signature right now. So.
All right, good. I do understand how efficient she is. I learned this.
Okay.
You did all do.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Kathleen, Middlebury Cemetery Association.
Just a quick update on this. You received a letter from the Middlebury Cemetery Association, basically following up their meeting with you, Linda Williams meeting with you. And in response, I will reach out to them and let them know that if they haven't already received it, the check is in the mail for the interest fees for the last couple of years. We have taken steps to invest those funds at a higher rate of interest. And when that CD expires in April, we will add that interest amount to a check for them. So they should be receiving that in May. And simultaneously, we're looking at what it might involve to turn the funds over to them. But that's a longer term play because that will involve going to the probate court if it is allowed.
There are a lot of cemeteries in our little town. How many of them are town?
Yeah.
A lot of them.
I'm not prepared to address that.
Okay, fair enough.
Our cemetery program could use some work.
Okay.
I think that's the first time in 5 years you've not been prepared.
I've never, I'm actually shocked.
I know. Like I feel like we can say anything and you're like, oh yeah, I have it right here.
I would have.
Cemetery program, that's
not your thing.
We are undone with the cemetery program.
I would have thrown out a number. Six.
Yeah, no.
She doesn't want to be
I don't play
fact-checked.
that game. Yep. Call it like it is.
Okay. Oh, I'm proud.
Verizon, is that just an
Um,
update for us?
Yeah, Verizon will be submitting a proposal to extend their lease term in 5-year increments for 7 of those 5-year increments, with a slightly reduced rate, but a 2% cost of living increase each year on the. And so we're talking about the lease on the Chipman Hill Tower.
Why is the rate reduced?
They said that they were reevaluating their portfolio.
Oh, I see.
So I just remember, I don't know how to address it now. Prior Chief Hanley's comments about the crowding on the tower, and it just would, I don't know, would somebody pay us more for that spot?
Ooh.
I mean,
Is AT&T up?
you want to renegotiate the contract, pay us less, and only a 2% cost of living increase each year?
Okay.
A couple
does it
of those
cost
are
to-
in our church tower. AT&T is up in our church.
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay. I will
Don't mess with that contract.
reach out to them with that lens.
Okay.
Back to the man.
The flood resilient communities.
We have Andrew Leroux with us, who is spearheading this effort.
We caught him unawares.
Hey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
For a few seconds there, I could only see Fred Dunnington's picture, which was exciting.
Oh, whoa.
I am happy to talk to you, but I know you already have a lot this evening. I was just going to reach out because we got contacted by Vermont Emergency Management asking the town to put in a full application for this flood resilient communities buyout program. This is the property across from the Maverick Station on Court Street that has flooded a couple times in the last 5 years and was in the paper and had an appraisal the morning before the flood. So very current evaluation of the house because we started thinking about moving. And we put in, and Kathleen was very patient with me and I think brought it to your attention a few weeks ago, the voluntary buyout form that just said you were interested in the process but not committed to anything.
The state has asked us to put in a full application. They have a review committee this Friday. I think they're going to meet a few more times in November. And they basically came with a proposed budget that includes the appraised value of the house plus money for demolition plus 5% management costs. And I still need to talk with Kathleen, I guess, about whether you guys are comfortable taking that on. ACRPC can if necessary, but we are already pretty time strapped. So there's a 5% addition for management of that. So it turns out to be, I think it's $376,000 total that they've offered to buy out that property. The challenge is that it would then become town property, and they basically want a guarantee that it will never be developed. That is a stream that comes through Buttall, known as Barnes Brook. It also wraps around the site of the new Stonecroft development, so we'll probably be getting additional runoff over here. So I would love to see that area kind of get the house out of it, and then we can talk about whether there's a way to salvage any parts of it. I feel very conflicted about buying out houses when I know there's a housing crunch, but that's one that definitely shouldn't be there. And given that they've already had 2 incidents last year, I'd rather not see that happen again. But those are decisions for you guys. So if you're interested in proceeding, you're not committing to anything, you're welcome to take a look at the budget and tweak numbers. The RPC also has funding for the lead and asbestos survey work through our brownfields fund. So we could also contribute some of that as well. So we just wanted to put it on your radar and see if you guys felt comfortable with that. And then that would basically go into DDM and they would make a formal offer, at which point you would have to decide whether you wanted to take it. But at this point, you're not committing to it.
Questions? Yes.
Andrew, can I ask a question about, so I'm supportive of the buyout, first off. What I'm a little concerned about and thinking about is what happens with the property and the restrictions on the property in the future. In particular, I know we're working on stormwater permits in that area, and I'm just wondering about might become a good site for like a retention pond or some kind of water overflow system. I don't know. I'm just speculating, obviously. Does this prevent us from building something like that in this site? And can we get an answer on that before we commit to? If the town is going to own it and then we can't do anything even to help mitigate stormwater issues, that's concerning for me. Would they let us build something there that would help with that?
I think that's a great question, and I can follow up on that. The Flood Resilience Fund is explicitly for clean water, and reducing flood risk is kind of the second part of it. So I imagine that any sort of I think there's a wetland actually just upstream, kind of off Thomas Street there. So if there were ways to extend that or make a retaining basin, or I know that whole area is potentially going to have some work done for combining the intersections as well. So I will clarify with the state folks and just make sure that it's not like you can't touch it or do anything with it, which doesn't seem feasible or appropriate for something right in the middle of downtown. But I think they just want to see it. It's ARPA funding, so it's pretty flexible. This is compared to a lot of the FEMA buyout funding. This is incredibly flexible, and we've been making attempts at it all around the county. And this is one of the first ones that might actually come to fruition because of all the moving parts. So they seem willing to work with us. So I can definitely propose that, make sure that language is included.
Yeah, I just don't want to get too restrictive and now we own it and now we can't even, put some infrastructure in there that might help with stormwater, That just.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Do we need to include that in the application that we would want
I
to?
don't know. I mean, Emily, did you have something to add?
Oh, Emily's
So
here.
I'm here, yeah. I recently met with FRCF about a different property, but we did discuss this one. And I specifically asked if we could use it as a stormwater detention pond or some other facility, and they said no. They really wanted to stay, it could be a pocket park or something like that, but it's really supposed to just be a naturalized area, which stormwater does not classify as.
Can we pretend?
We'd love to.
So if there's a pond there, it makes a natural wildlife area. Well, I don't know that I can support the buyout if we
So
can't
so
do
why
anything.
not? I don't understand.
Because, well, I don't know.
What
I think because then it's a
Why I wouldn't support-
man-made sort of detention area, which acts much differently than a wetland or stream complex.
So what's wrong with if we just leave it as a wetland and a stream complex? And by the way,
Well,
this
they're
application
talking about we can only leave it as like a pop-up park, right?
Not a park.
We could leave it as a
It just
wetland.
has to be a naturalized area. It can't be a man-made constructed area.
And
which
so
stormwater falls under.
as a
Form it whatever we
wetland,
want.
it provides some flood resiliency, but maybe not as much as an engineered retention pond. Is that the trade-off we're making?
I think that might depend on who you ask.
Sure. Okay.
She might say it's better.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's any flexibility in the program, or do you think it's like, no?
I got a pretty hard no when I was talking to them, but I do think that it would add a protective layer to that neighborhood and to that area. And I also, like, sort of when I was thinking about it, when we redo the intersection, we were sort of looking at the space across the street as being a green space. It could potentially free that up to be used in a different way where that becomes stormwater and this becomes a green space.
House.
I think it does open a door for
Very dirty.
conversation and utilizing the space differently.
Okay. I mean, the
I'm-
one
I'm
thing is we
supportive.
have another tear down right across the road. So if we took responsibility for the tear down, we might be able to aggregate those two. And
Yeah, I'm supportive of the buyout. I just wish there was more flexibility in what we could do with the property.
sometimes you can't have it all.
Doesn't mean you can't ask.
No, you're right in asking.
That's why I
It's
asked.
certainly not a
Well, we
reason.
can
not-
still ask.
It's right, it's right. And it's certainly not a reason not to do this.
Andrew, did you have a point?
I
We
think
just-
if
we just don't
anything,
need
it
any
frees
more
up flexibility
space to
across the
maintain.
street for where that green space was going to be, where I think we would potentially gain more stormwater treatment capacity over on that side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's limited.
Okay.
Does-
She's the
does-
stormwater expert, so.
Yes.
Does this amount include the demolition and everything?
I think so, and it
So
Yeah.
how much are we actually
Five-
paying for
5%.
the 5% of the management fee?
Yeah, it includes all of that, I thought I heard. Demolition and a 5% management fee, so take that out of there.
I'm wondering how much we're paying the actual
I
property
think
owner.
0. Oh, for the property?
Yeah.
280 is the
280?
expected.
If you
Yeah.
go to the number 2.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
number two. Though.
Okay,
She had an appraisal done that morning. I believe 2 or 3 years ago, she paid 160, maybe.
The property card says
So
land
it's-
value 84,000, homestead 184,000.
There you go.
When they
Closer.
Mhm.
It's always good when you can get the government to buy your property. Always a good deal.
Usually.
Especially when the housing market's the way it is right now.
Yeah, really.
okay, any questions?
No.
I'll move
Pleasure of the
to,
board.
I'll move to approve the application by the town of Middlebury to the state of Vermont's flood resilient communities buyout program for funding to acquire and demolish the structures at 83 Court Street.
Second.
Any last questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the help.
Thank you, and thank you, Kathleen and Emily.
And Emily, I believe you're on about the vehicles, maybe?
Well, Bill Kernan was here for quite a while. But he backed off. Andrew, do you want me just to put you back in our audience?
That'll be great. Thank you.
Hold on.
I'm not very in the loop on the vehicles.
Yeah.
Kathleen, you might have more information than I do on this one.
Okay. So in your packet, you have Bill Kernan's research and recommendation on the purchase of, he would like authority to purchase 2 Chevy Bolt EVs from Alderman's for a price not to exceed $25,000 each. He had some prices on cars that were available at the time he got the bids, but who knows if those cars are still available. So he
Okay,
was
so
looking.
we don't know if these 2 used are going to be there for us.
Right,
Gotcha.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds lovely. Emily, are you okay with trying a Bolt?
Yeah, sure. We have to install a charger, but other than that.
Good, and we should, yeah.
Does the town get the tax credit if we, no, we get nothing. It's worth a
Man.
shot. Do we get the free charging station?
There's a lot of money for charging stations.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying.
Cool. Motion?
I approve the recommendation of the Department of Public Works to purchase 2 2020 Chevy Bolt electric vehicles from Alderman Chevrolet car dealership in Rutland for a price not to exceed $25,000 for each vehicle.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
And a big thank you to Bill for all that work and effort to provide us something more like we asked him. So thank you, Tim.
Maybe it encourages our local dealerships to get some EVs on the lot.
Big commitment.
No, for sure. But there's demand. We're creating it.
Since we're keeping
Oh.
Emily up, do you want to take Emily first and then we'll circle
Yes,
back to the
that'd be good.
easements?
I don't know.
Okay, so proposed water line at the 116.
Yeah.
The down pond project has been designed for a number of years, is my understanding, and there's a 260-foot section of asbestos pipe that was not added to that design, and it is too brittle to reconnect to at this point. And so V-Trans has run the new line up the west side of 116. They've crossed 116 with it and then got to the point of reconnection and it failed last week, but they attempted to reconnect. So we need to do sort of emergency repair on that additional 260 feet of line. So I've been trying to coordinate with V-Trans on the best approach. They have a requirement to stay 6 feet off of the edge of pavement for their shoulder with any utilities, but they are, which is right where that AC pipe is currently. It's a pretty tight right of way there, so we would have to work through easements if we went outside of that distance, which would then be time consuming. So they are allowing us to install the new line inside that 6 foot area. And we've negotiated to work with VA Collins and Cabricki, who are the contractors on site. The price is higher than what we're seeing on other projects, but I think the alternative would be putting it out to contract ourselves and then waiting for the work to occur after V-Trans is out of there. And so then we're paying mobilization and everything on top of it. I don't know that it's such a small length. I don't know that we would get much better than what we're being offered here. So essentially, they quoted us $95,302. In addition to that, we're waiting on quotes for putting flowable fill in the existing AC pipe so that we don't have to excavate it and remove the hazardous waste. And we're still waiting on quotes for cutting that AC pipe, which is a specialized endeavor that you have to, a contractor, a different contractor will have to come in and do that, that's certified. So we're still waiting on those two numbers. So I'm asking for it not to exceed 120,000. We should be well within that, and we have it in water capital to afford it.
Questions? Our
Let's get it
infrastructure lady, do you,
Let's get it done.
okay? Well then, how about a motion?
I'll move to approve the proposed agreement between the Town of Middlebury and Vermont Agency of Transportation related to the construction of 260 linear feet of water line for a cost not to exceed $120,000.
Second.
Before we vote, Emily, this line is fine once we put some flowable fill in it. It's not something we're gonna need to replace in 5 years.
No guarantee.
So we're replacing it with ductile iron, 12-inch ductile iron.
Okay.
So we'll be filling the asbestos line with flowable fill, which
Right.
is like the concrete. So
Okay.
we will not be using it, but that way it won't collapse on itself or cause sinkholes down the road.
That's what she was
Gotcha,
saying.
perfect.
So we don't have to dig it out. and
Right.
do it.
It's considered a hazardous material, so as soon as you excavate it out, you're paying.
Yeah, gajillions of dollars. Okay.
Well,
Perfect.
you gotta like when you dig it up, you've gotta like wrap it in
Yeah,
plastic.
I know. I've
dispose
seen
of
the
it.
hazmat.
You probably have to.
So you're allowed to leave it in place.
Yeah.
As soon as you move it, it's expensive.
It's all over the hills of Vermont.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thanks, Emily. I did hear that they opened one way, so,
So 116 is back open. It's open to one way during the week, so they can do shoulder work and work on our pipe and things of that nature. But it is traffic again, which is lovely. And on another note, our bypass pump was removed today, so our main pump station is back in action.
All right.
awesome.
Huge effort.
Thanks for all the work.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thanks, Emily.
What's left?
Bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, just an update on the bike, the easements for Exchange Street on the sidewalk and bike path. So we got the last signature last week from Rock McIntyre, and part of that agreement was a slight redesign that we had approved and was done, and he was okay with it, and that the agreement that since we're the ones building the sidewalk over his sewer line, that if he had to, if there was damages and he had to fix that, that we would pay for up to $2,000 of the sidewalk repairs necessitated by it. I think it's in a low risk area, but that was the agreement that we had to make to get him to sign off on it. And so now, and we have a letter, I believe, for us to sign agreeing to that. And then we are ready to start moving forward and hopefully have it ready for bidding for next year. So,
Great.
That'd be great.
do we need a motion on that letter?
I think that would be good. Yeah.
There's not a motion in your packet, but could somebody just,
I'll move that we approve the agreement with Rock McIntyre Services for up to $2,000 of sidewalk work in the event of a private sewer line service break on Exchange Street.
Right.
We sign the letter. Second. Is that okay?
Any questions?
Beth will spruce
Hearing
it up,
none,
right?
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, I think the last is entertaining a letter of intent with New England Hydropower Company. And if you could come on forward here.
Good evening. So, yeah, we've been working on providing or evaluating the potential for hydropower, and I think this is known to many of you. On the town side, not on the other side, but on the north side, with the potential to build a facility that would generate about 500 or about 3,100 megawatt hours. It's a 500 kilowatt hour machine with the potential of delivering about 3.1 megawatts per annum of power, of hours of power. And so to that end, what we thought that would be useful, it would be to have a letter of intent with the town. And the idea would be that we would now start to explore the real technical value. We've had some people visit this. We've had some engineering folks take a look at it. It takes a long time to do these projects. This is not something that can happen really quickly. And there's a fair amount of investment along the way. And what we have found over the years is that it is best to come to quick no's. So you spend a certain amount of money to see what can happen. If you hit a hurdle whereby you decide that this is not going to work and it would be too expensive, non-commercial, or it physically can't work, that you spend as little money as you can to get to that point. And so this letter is really an agreement between us that you know and acknowledge that we are going to do a little bit further research on this that would be seriously directed towards ultimately building a generating station at that site. We are very aware of the historical value of the existing powerhouse. We are also hoping to be able to take advantage of some of the sluice ways that are carrying water in that direction already. That's one of the research points that we are going to try to establish during the process. We also have to look at how we will actually be able to construct the site, because there has to be lay down areas and so forth. And that's part of this exploration. Can we do it? Because there's a very narrow strip of land which is covered in cars and parking, and we can't disturb it for too long. So this does take, the actual building of the site takes maybe 4 months to 6 months total, and we would order the machinery to do that. One of the reasons we've been able to go to the other side is because there is another technology that we have started to deploy that we didn't have at our disposal in the beginning, and that is a stream diver. And the beauty of the stream diver is it sits down in the water, and so it's not as exposed as some of the other technologies. Plus, it needs less space. And the second part of that is a really valuable thing for that site, because if you use less space, it's less obvious and so forth. It doesn't mean that there won't be a new powerhouse there. And I, explicitly have to say that we will try to make that new powerhouse as close to what the old powerhouse looks like, the same materials, the same idea, but there is going to be additional structure there because there has to be. There's no way that we can use that, the old powerhouse, because it really isn't structurally sound enough to do it. We may use it for certain purposes. We would not destroy it. We would keep it as a historical artifact. That's part of the plan. And we've worked in canals and in sensitive areas before, down in Pennsylvania and also up in Rhode Island. So we are aware. This letter does not commit the the town to anything really other than to the knowledge that we are going to do some exploration and that we will work with the town of Middlebury in whatever way we can. There may come a point where we have to do some core sampling, which we would alert the town to. We would not do it on our own. That would not, be something that we would just kind of go off and do. And it's pretty, core samples don't really do too much to the local environment at all. I mean, they're just to solidify what's there, what's the bedrock, what are we building on, and how stable is it. So, I mean, I think again, what we will do is we will file with the FERC, because the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission requires that we do so. We will file a preliminary permit in concert with this letter. And the idea with that is that we will have the exclusive rights for 3 years to evaluate that site, just that site, nothing else. We wouldn't use 3 years. I mean, the idea is that we would do it much sooner than that, because you're investing money all the time, in doing the studies and in the process that goes on. So what we're hoping is you come to quick terms. If we come to a point where we see it's going to be a terrific site, then we'll sit down with the town, because it is town property, and we will then go forward and really elaborate on this letter and develop something that is a little bit more enduring. Usually it's a lease, but it can be, there are various ways you can go about that. And we will explore all of it. We would likely own the site because most people don't know how to run sites like this, and we're investing all the money in the site. So the idea would be that we would own the site and that we would find an off-taker. We've been talking with Middlebury College in terms of purchasing the power from that site, which is an essential part of this. And I don't know whether you have any more to add to that. Then we're working on trying to have a good relationship with the town, the college, and us, because as an off-taker, I think that's really one of the key points in terms of the investment community and the people that will be coming forward and making an investment. They have to know that they can get a return on that investment, and the way you do that is to have a good off-taker that is sound and safe.
Yeah, so it's David Provo, EVP Finance and Administration at the college. The college fully supports this effort, both from a standpoint of our needs as well as the community needs. President Patton is committed to, once we achieve our Energy 2028 goals of 100% renewable, locally sourced energies, she would like to support building that capacity for the whole region of Vermont, and that the college's role of playing in any way that we can by supporting projects like that is we don't want to be a utility, we don't want to be a hydro company, but we think hydro has a proven record here in Middlebury. Anyone who's looked at this knows the incredible potential of it. So college is in full support of project.
Fantastic.
Questions?
Very exciting. I heard you say lease and then own.
Leasing the property that
Okay.
it's on. So excuse me.
You'll own the capital investment.
We own
but
the investment, you
you
own the
got a
land,
90-year lease.
and these leases are not something that you make a lot of money on. I mean, to be honest, they're pretty basic leases, because they have to be, because it would, if you start leasing along other lines, you end up to a point where it's not commercially viable. One of the really great things about this site is there's no dam safety issues, because there's no dam. And we've had really amazing issues with dam safety after the failures of the dams out in the West. FERC dam safety has come into every site, and whether it's a small, tiny site or a very large site, and they're very concerned about this. Here, because it's a natural falls and so forth, it really is not an issue. And the fisheries is not an issue as well. There may be other things that we will have to look at, bats, I don't know what else. That's part of the exploration. We will start to go down a list of things like the environmental issues, like the physical structure issues, and determine, what's viable and so forth. So, yeah, we would lease it from you or get an easement. I mean, there are a lot of ways to do this. With public entities, especially, it's much more flexible than some of the private entities because they expect different parameters that they work with.
It's really hard not to put an N on the end of the word when you say dam safety.
Yeah, I know.
Any other questions? Would anybody care to make a motion?
You're the master motion maker.
I don't have to be. Go for it. I'll move the board authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsay to sign the proposed letter of intent with New England Hydropower Company LLC, outlining the agreement between the town of Middlebury and New England Hydropower Company LLC towards the mutual objective of development of a low-impact hydroelectric power facility on the property owned by the town of Middlebury on the north side of the Otter Creek Falls on Main Street in Middlebury, parcels number 24, how do you say that right? 24,129 and 24,132?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Look forward to your analysis.
Well, great, and we will constantly be in touch with you, because it's really, it has to be that kind of partnership while we're doing this.
So the megawatt hours you cited are around a yield that's about like 300 kilowatts. Is that what you expect?
Well, the way you look at it is, how do you turn that into one way to look at it is the number of houses if you get to that. And, it's probably around 700 with over time. And one of the reasons it works so well is because we're only taking a small part of the water.
Right.
Because that theoretically you could build a huge power station here and get 3 times that. So
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Curious
I have a
before-
question about power
Be
generation.
curious before
in
now,
our
yeah.
town.
It could be an
10:20.
email. It could be an email.
Board member,
That could be a email, you're right.
approval of check warrants. Who's got them?
I have them. He's a big one. I move to approve the total expenditures. You'll love reading this one. Total expenditures in the amount of $2,509,151.62, consisting of $2,392,738.23 for accounts payable and $116,413.39 for payroll for the period of
Your name.
September 27,
Oh, my name.
2023 through October 10, 2023.
Nicely done.
Second.
Big one.
All in
Farhad
favor?
seconded.
Aye.
Farhad.
Those opposed?
Yes, Farhad seconded.
Those who are just sitting in shock and not saying anything? Okay, board member concerns.
I'm concerned that it's 10:20.
Lindsay's
Go home.
ready. She's ready for dinner.
Yes.
Dan?
No concerns. Good day. Long.
Heather?
Just quickly, congratulations to Beth Dow and Brian on their induction into the
Congratulations.
alumni, Middlebury High School Alumni
Oh.
Association, right? Did I get that right? Yeah.
Middlebury High School, Middlebury Union High School Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's awesome.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yes.
So Beth, I got
I
to
read that.
watch both Beth and Brian be inducted on Friday night, so congratulations to them.
It's pretty cool. 2
And-
townspeople there at the same time, huh?
Not bad. Not bad.
And we didn't get a chance to say during the celebration, but I just wanted to offer condolences to Victor's family. And I know it's late. One other quick thing. Should we have a select board member on the task force? Something to think. We don't have to answer it tonight,
Yes.
but just like maybe have one of us attending those meetings. We can talk about it later.
Ron?
Yes, I want to talk about Victor for a couple minutes. When I first joined the select board, I made some good friends, but Victor was not one of them. He was a father figure, a mentor to me, very kind, warm, very helpful whenever I went to him for any advice. He was always funny. Whenever we got together, he will have stories to tell. I enjoyed reading in the Eddie Indy. He gave me countless books to read. He always used to bring me a book and say, "Parth, you should read this." And I didn't understand half of them, but he was a great gentleman to me. I have very, very fond memories of him. A couple of them, one of them is very personal. Whenever we sit for breakfast or dinner, we used to go out a lot. He will pull next to me and he will grab my shoulder and then squeeze it. I said, "You're gonna be okay, don't worry." And he will just say something funny. That was so endearing. The other thing is his love for Betty, the way he held her hand everywhere he go. He used to come to my store. When we go to the dinner, he put the chair for her and stuff. We're gonna miss him.
I got to see him just a day before, or 2 days before he passed, and Michelle saw him just the day before, and he died of a broken heart. I mean, he really did, and it was his heart, but he died of a broken heart, and he was ready, and he sitting on his table was still reading the books, and he was sharp and ready.
When we met,
goodbye.
when we went last week to see him, he grabbed my hand and he wouldn't let go for a while. He was like firm grip.
When I saw him on Tuesday, he grabbed my hand, and I knew what he was saying. It was really touching. Yep. And he enjoyed having Michelle kiss him each time she left.
He liked Michelle more than he liked you.
Everybody likes Michelle more than they like me. I can tell you that.
That's everybody, right?
Almost
That's
together.
everybody.
Andy?
I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. Hey, thanks everybody for hanging in there tonight. I think, there's no doubt we had to give the amount of time that we gave to the
Yeah,
topic.
absolutely.
And, but we had other stuff we needed to do, so thanks for hanging in there.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn, to entertain.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? So you want to stay? Okay, thank you.
I need some food.
I'm all hungry. I had a big lunch.
I have sushi waiting for me.